If everyone will vote aye on the electronic voting board for roll call.
You have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We're gonna begin the meeting. I know that Senator Norman has a bill here designating a bridge for Trooper Burke Bates, and I know his wife is here, and we wanted to make sure that you had some time and let Senator Norman speak and get this bill before us and out as soon as we can. Senator Norman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and ladies and gentlemen of the committee. This is one of those occasions where you come before a Senate committee with mixed emotions. It is a time of some solemnity, but also of some celebration. And Senate Bill 941 is before you.
We do have a substitute.
And I respectfully ask that you consider adopting the substitute, please, sir.
There's been a motion and a second on the substitute. All in favor say aye. All opposed? All right, the substitute's before us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill is seeking to name a bridge in New Kent County, the Trooper Pilot Burke Bates Memorial Bridge. And as you know, back on August the 12th in 2017, there was some civil unrest in the Charlottesville community, and Pilot Trooper Bates was on the helicopter that was monitoring the governor's motorcade after he arrived in the area to assess what the situation was. Trooper Bates had dedicated his life to law enforcement and had spent approximately 13 years in law enforcement in Florida and was assigned to the aviation unit when he came here. And he is a resident of New Kent County. I was very pleased when the New Kent County Board of Supervisors was very kind and recognized his service and his family's sacrifice by adopting a resolution which they have forwarded to me concurring and applauding the naming of this particular bridge. And so before you consider that, we're very blessed this afternoon to have his wife, Amanda Bates, who is with me, and of course she is his surviving wife, but he also had twins, one young man and one young lady. And if you would be so generous to afford her a moment of respect, as I think she would like to share some words with you all.
Absolutely. Ms. Bates, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm going to read. It's just what I'm best. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Thank you so much for allowing me the pleasure to address you today in regards to Senate Bill 941. When my husband Burke was 8 years old, he and his family were out to a county fair when their house was burglarized. It was a Virginia State Trooper that responded. I can vividly remember the look in his face when he told me the story on our first date, as it is how he chose his career path. He told me that a trooper came to his house, took off his hat, knelt down to a scared 8-year-old Burke, and said, "Don't worry, son, it'll be okay." From that moment forward, Burke wanted nothing more than to become a Virginia State Police trooper. When he was a senior in college, the Virginia State Police was on a hiring freeze, so he had to explore other agencies in order to make sure that he had experience he needed when the freeze was lifted. Florida Highway Patrol made him his first offer, and not too many people know, but Burke left school 15 credits shy of graduating because his family fell on hard times. That was who Burke was, always putting his family first. I like to think it was God's way of making sure we were able to meet. Finally, in January of 2004, Burke began the 107th basic session in the Virginia State Police Academy. He was so excited. He graduated in August and was assigned to Division I, Area 8, which is the city of Richmond and Henrico County, working permanent midnights. It wasn't long after that he was assigned to the motor unit, where he worked for 8 years. From there, he applied to become a part of the Executive Protective Unit, or EPU, for the governor. He honorably served Governor McCullough for a little over 3.5 years. In August of 2016, he became a special agent with the Bureau of Criminal Investigation, who is proud of everything he did with the Virginia State Police. However, nothing, and I mean nothing, made him more proud the day he became a trooper pilot. In July of 2017, the call came. His career dream came true. I can hear his voice now. I got it, sweetheart. I got it. I'm now a trooper pilot. Burke was the best husband, father, son, and friend, and brother anyone could ask for. Family always came first. He had an amazing ability of making family everywhere he went. To Burke, family wasn't just blood. He had an innate ability to find the good in people and bring it out of them. He did this as an adult hockey teammate, a youth hockey league coach, a VSP Motors instructor, and a VSP trooper. Once you were family to Burke, he would do anything for you. If it weren't for this ability, our family wouldn't be where it was today, the family that Burke built. Without that, we would be lost. Burke was the penultimate trooper. He loved being a trooper, he loved VSP, and he tried every day to bring honor and distinction to the badge he wore and the agency that he loved. As much as Burke would hate the attention associated with this process, he would be honored and humbled to know that everybody who travels the highways of the Commonwealth will see his name and know the sacrifice he gave. He will also be comforted to know that his friends, coworkers, and family have a visible memory of him so near to a place he calls home. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, thank you so very much for your time today. As you can see, Senate Bill 941 is highly personal to us. I speak for myself, our children, and our family when I tell you that we are extremely blessed to have had Burke for the time that we did. However, we are deeply honored that he will be remembered in a positive light as opposed to the negativity surrounding the day that he passed. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And let me say that, being a former state trooper,
Thank you for your
being the
service.
father of a state trooper, nothing that we could say could bring or fill that void. But, the scripture says, no greater sacrifice hath any man than he lay down his life for a friend. And that rings true in a lot of what law enforcement does, military does, the sacrifice they make, knowing what could happen. And having been out there, I could speak for Burke right now. Even though the sacrifice was made, he would never change it if he had the opportunity today. And that is very prevalent in the work that they do, the men and women that are out there. And I just want to humbly say thank you, because I know that sacrifice was great for you.
Thank you, sir.
And this is a small token, I believe, that we can do in that sacrifice.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Cosgrove.
I move to report the bill.
It's been moved and seconded that we report the bill. All in favor, vote aye on the electronic voting board. Bill's reported.
13 ayes, 0 nays.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank everybody for your patience, and we're going to start with the sign-up sheet. Senator Vogel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the committee. I have Senate Bill 601. And this bill has to do with standardizing towing fees in Planning District 16. And what my bill does is two things. It addresses towing fees and allows them to be set at a rate of $135 with a $25 surcharge. And the second thing it does is it streamlines a signature requirement, which addresses a current redundant second signature that is now required, but is actually, frankly, unnecessary, because currently under the contract process that they have, it's not necessary to have a second signature, because by contract, you're already authorized to go in and tow and do the towing, basically. There are a number of people who are here who wish to speak on the bill, and I would like to give them the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Matt Bentka with the Northern Virginia Towers Association, and we support this bill wholeheartedly. And these are the exact same things that we did for Planning District 8 last year, and we're just asking you to do for Planning District 16 this year.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Chris Shanks. My brother and myself own a towing company in the Fredericksburg area, family operated. We have about 18 employees. Today we're here to ask for support of Senator Vogel's bill. We're asking to for the second signature portion of this bill, especially the safety concerns we have for our employees and the employees of the places we tow from, the contracts we have. The longer we're on a property, in or on a property, the more of a risk we're taking by being there and allowing a confrontation or a altercation to take place just by us being there. Last year you may have heard about there were several incidences of violent attacks on tow truck drivers who were simply trying to do their jobs. So we asked again to support Mrs. Vogel's bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Katrina Jones with the Virginia Retail Merchants Association. We fully support this bill, and I have a few other groups that have authorized me to say that they also support the bill, and that's the Virginia Towers and Recovery Operators, the Fredericksburg Chamber of Commerce, the Virginia Apartment and Office Building Association, and the Virginia Restaurant, Lodging, and Travel Association. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Craig Bieber with MIRA, Major Incident Heavy Recovery Operators Association, Association of Class A Towers throughout the Commonwealth. We support this bill for the reasons previously stated. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone in the audience like to speak in opposition? Is any questions of the committee? It's been moved and seconded, and we report the bill. All in favor, vote aye on the electronic voting board.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee.
Thank you.
13 ayes, 0 nays.
Senator Peterson here. All right, we're going to skip over Senator Peterson. Senator Stewart. Senator Reeves, if you'll come up. Senator Stewart has a bill to do the same, identical to yours. Can we just roll Senator Stewart's into yours?
That'd be fine, sir.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. We roll Senate Bill. Let me find the bill real quick. Yeah, 206 into 466. All in favor of rolling the bills together, vote aye on the electronic voting board.
13 ayes, 0 nays.
All right, the bills are rolled together. Senator Reeves.
Mr. Chairman, this came at the request of the George Washington Regional Commission, so I think that's probably why Senator Stewart has it as well. It's a Christmas tree bill, and it just adds US 201, States Routes 3 and 207, and Richard and I both kind of share that area. It's non-limited access, multi-lane divided highway that can raise the speed limit to up to 60 miles per hour. The speed limits are still based on engineering study that considers various factors that affect the safe and appropriate speed. If you look at the actual bill, it actually takes out between the town of Port Royal and Saluda and adds those various routes, and that's the bill, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Any questions of the patron? Anyone here like to speak in favor of the bill? Anyone like to speak in opposition to the bill? Traveled those roads many times. I wish it was a little higher when I was traveling. It's been seconded, moved and seconded to report the bill. All in favor, vote aye on the electronic voting board.
11 ayes, 2 nays.
Bill reports 11-2.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Much as you're down,
Senate Bill 561, Senator Obenshain asks that we carry his bill over till 2019. If there's been a motion and a second, we carry Senate Bill 561 over till 2019. All in favor, vote aye on electronic voting board.
13 ayes, 0 nays.
All right. Senator Eben. Gone. Senator Howe. Senator McPike. If you don't mind, Senator McPike, there's two bills somewhere, yours and Senator Black's. If you'll present yours, and then we're going to hear from Senator Black also. And then we're going to try to look through both to see how they differ.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you actually want to start with Senate Bill 643 on Easy Pass transponder fees before we jump into the
Yeah, let's
tolling?
do that one before we do the 66 toll.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 643 seeks to resolve an issue, the Easy Pass transponder fees that we have now that there are two types, one of which has a flex option to flip on. You flip that switch on when you are riding on the hot lane facilities or HOV facilities. That way you don't get charged. The other standard one has no switch. You just get charged when you're on those facilities. The issue is that currently, if you have a flex Easy Pass transponder, you get charged $10 if you don't use the free option over a period of 6 months. This bill shifts it to a year. And it is simply the fact that we want behaviorally people to be able to buy the flex option and have the option as they start to figure out how to slug, how to get riders, the option. It takes time. It's hard to invite folks into your car. The slug lines, if you haven't slugged, it's interesting. Please come up to my district. We'll do it some morning and take a trip and see how the system works. I've slugged for a number of years. But if we're going to really promote this behavior and people to get other folks to commute together, it's really important that we give a widest range option. And that's why this bill sets out to adjust that fee to a year period to allow much more time. Commuter patterns change as sometimes the daily family life change and other things change. Sometimes work assignments change. This allows a lot more flexibility for families to do that, Mr. Chairman, and that is the bill.
All right, any questions of the patron about the bill? And then anyone in the audience like to speak to the bill? All right. All right, VDOT. Joanne, do you?
Mr. Chair, Joanne Maxwell from VDOT. We don't have an issue with the bill. We think it's a happy compromise. It still would provide the deterrent for those folks who would be inclined to get the more expensive option if they didn't use it. But at the same time, we understand the concerns raised by the senator.
Okay. It's been a motion and a second that we report Senate Bill 643. All in favor, vote aye on electronic voting board.
13 ayes, 0 nays.
Bill reports 13-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, your next bill, 929, is dealing with tolling hours, and if you want to go ahead and present that, but we're going to bring Senator Black up too after you present and
Thank you,
try to
Mr.
figure out what you're trying to get to.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an issue, members of the committee, I-66 inside the Beltway is a limited access highway, the only one that I know of in the nation. Mr. Chairman, in your area, it would be much like having I-81 from Abingdon to Bristol. It's about this close to the same length that you can't drive on unless you have more than one people in your car. The changes this year, VDOT excluded an additional 3 hours of a family's ability to get to work. 3 hours. So the pre-existing timeframes were 6:30 a.m. to 9 a.m. Those were previously excluded. Then in the afternoon, the reverse going out back home, it was 4 to 6:30. VDOT has now adjusted those hours from 5:30 a.m. to 9:30, where you can no longer drive on that interstate highway in the morning. and in the afternoon from 3 to 7 p.m. So now families have 3 hours less opportunity if they can't, because people commute to different areas. There's some areas that, like to the Pentagon and other areas, Boston, have opportunities to pick up riders, but others don't. So, Mr. Chairman, it'd be like every morning, families that commute from Abington to Bristow would have to take Old Jonesboro Road and other areas to circuitously get around to get to work. And families in my area and many other folks' areas have adjusted their pattern to the previous hours. So they'd leave for work a little early in the morning. That way they could get out at work a little bit earlier to extend that rush hour and allow the flexibility to get home to the kids to get stuff done. Now, all those opportunities are blocked out. So you either have to pay, which right now, last week, for a segment of that road, Mr. Chairman, it'd be like paying $46 to get from Abington to Bristow. That's what's going on. For different time segments and time windows, $46.75 was the charges last week. It's not going to go away. In fact, there's construction that needs to occur because there's expansion of the road from the Beltway at 495 into Boston. So guess what? Construction barriers are about to go up. Do you think that's going to exacerbate the prices? You bet they are. Not only that, but we have the outside the Beltway construction that needs to occur. The core problem isn't necessarily the concept of the project itself. We can debate tolling and paying for infrastructure. That ship sailed, unfortunately, long ago. But I think the issues that in this circumstance are we have not built the parking lots outside the Beltway to give families a reasonable place to park, a reasonable place to get on a bus, and then to be able to drive through that segment of I-66. That's a real problem. We have put the cart before the horse in this instance, and this is why this bill sets out to return the hours to what families were used to, trying to get to and from work, until the project is complete, until those parking lots and that infrastructure is in place to give folks a viable solution to pick up slugs, pick up riders, to take advantage of means to get into work without just a single occupant vehicle. I think everyone understand that that corridor is so full, we have to look at multimodal, we have to look at buses, but frankly, right now, the infrastructure just isn't in place. There's no other option. And that's what's frustrating families. It's time to change and roll this back until which time that the project is mature enough to deal with the issues that are at hand. And that is the bill. That's sort of the core of the issue, Mr. Chairman.
All right, do you have anybody here to speak in favor of your bill?
There's about 100,000 that are busy commuting to and from.
Well, I get that. There's about 200,000 my way on bills that they'd like to speak to.
Yeah.
We can't get them in here. If not, I would like to ask Senator Black to come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I will speak on behalf of my colleague's bill, and mine is very similar. We face similar problems. We've got just astronomical tolls. Our tolls run, in some cases, $47 for a one-way toll. It's just like nothing else in the country. And the problem is that we really need additional roadway inside the Beltway, and this thing has been done sort of backwards. And what my bill does is basically it instructs VDOT to return to the previous tolling period, the hours that they had before, just as my colleague here proposed. That's one thing. Also, it says that where the tolls on an individual exceed $200 a month, that excess should be refunded to them through the Easy Pass system. And then the third thing it does is it activates tolling of reverse commutes, because the way that the commutes are set up is people coming from the west going east, they get tolled in the morning during rush hour, they get tolled in the evening during rush hour. People on the inside of the Beltway, since they're going against the traffic, they pay very little. So those are the three things that it does. And I have the same 100,000 people behind me. I think I see a couple hundred of them right here. And so anyway, that's the gist of it. There's just tremendous amount of frustration over these tremendous tolls.
I understand. And I think there's several amendments to your bill.
Yes, I could make those. At first, I would ask that we delete lines 67 through.
Let me let council report those amendments, and then I'll entertain a motion on the amendments.
The council doesn't have this particular one first. Oh, okay, you do have it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On lines, there's 3 amendments total. On line 61, after "of the," strike "eastbound widening project on" and insert "widening of a 4-mile segment of eastbound." On line 61, after 66, strike "inside the Capitol Beltway," insert "from the Dulles Connector Road to Fairfax Drive." And on line 67, strike all of lines 67 through 89, which is essentially removing the last 2 enactments from the bill.
All right, is there a motion on those amendments? It's been moved and seconded that we adopt those amendments. All in favor say aye. All opposed? All right. The bill's before us as amended. Now, I realize that there's a lot, and I'm glad you brought Abington to Bristol, because there was some, when VDOT enters into these contracts with the construction companies, they have certain times that they want to shut an interstate down, and what little bit of construction we do have, it was on 81 and between Abington and Bristol, and there was a lot of complaints about that. But because those are contractual issues that VDOT enters into with the companies that are doing these, they're partnering with the PB3s or whatever, I think that's something that concerns me about both these bills, is that, you know, these are contractual issues that, according to the Constitution, that we try not to get into the middle of if we are going to change the way that that construction process is done. I realize you're utilizing and concerned about the tolls that are being charged when they come back through, but I still think that there's some issues there constitutionally about those contracts.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Senator Peake.
Mr. Chairman, just to.
Pike, I'm sorry.
We'll get there,
Do it
Mr.
again.
Chairman.
Yeah.
Couple of years, we'll get there.
You're still young.
Thank you, sir. I think one of the keys, though, is to understand there's 2 different components. Inside the Beltway, then the tolling hours are right now controlled by us, by the Virginia State Department of Transportation. The outside of the Beltway project is executed and is continuing and proceeding. These are 2 independent segments. The point of these bills is that they are a continuous project, and we want the infrastructure completed outside the Beltway, because that's where the parking capacity, that's where all the cars are coming from. And so that's the main point. If we have control and then the ability to change these hours as the state of Virginia, as the Commonwealth. So that should not impact the outside of the Beltway, because they're starting their design, their projects and looking at the parking lots design. There's been lots of public hearing on when and where they're going to do those. So the point of this is execute the project, get it moving forward, then you can look at the full system when it's in place. And that's really the key point. And so really, outside the Beltway is a separate contract. This is something inside the Beltway that we control today.
All right. Senator Cosgrove.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, first off, if it's appropriate, I'd make a motion to roll Senate Bill 929 into Senate Bill 898. So moved.
All right, there's a motion and a second that we roll Senate Bill 929 into Senate Bill 898. All in favor, vote aye on electronic voting board.
Thirteen ayes, 0 nays.
All right,
Mr. Chairman,
those are rolled together. Senator Cosgrove.
I'd ask either of our 2 senators, these hot lanes we're talking about, these were built under a public-private partnership, is that correct?
One segment.
One segment, okay. I guess I would echo the chairman's concern about the infringement on existing contracts with this bill? Is there a conflict with what we have contracted and what these bills are trying to do?
Mr. Chairman, I would not say so. I would let VDOT speak to any of that. There is a sequence of it, but I don't think this would impede the sequence of it all, because it's about the hours of exclusion to these families that have lost 3 hours of the ability to get to work and back to their families.
Mr. Chairman, before we hear from VDOT, I would say that you mentioned Senator Carrico's area, but, egregiously neglected my area. I would say that the HOV lanes in Hampton Roads have just been changed from 2 hours of HOV to 4 hours of now hot NHOV lanes. And these were not public-private partnerships. These were basically built with federal funding and state funding. So, and it's happened here before, and that money isn't earmarked for any particular project. At the same time, when the Elizabeth River Crossings project was done, people were paying tolls on the downtown tunnel and the midtown tunnel in Norfolk for projects that had yet to be completed. The money was actually going towards those projects that were being done, but they were still paying while it was being completed. And I guess I don't see why Hampton Roads should be treated differently than Northern Virginia. And I know, get your own bill, but at the same time, I'm going to have a hard time supporting this.
All right.
Well, Mr. Chairman.
Senator McPike.
If I could just add to that, because that's one of the problems, is we're building a transportation network that involves different language, different rules for different roads. And that's a big problem. And I agree for Hampton Roads as well, and we need to talk about that discussion. We're trying to write this for this area. And it's important that we have a common context as we drive our network of highways. It's challenging to people that you got different segments and different rules across our entire network. I think it's bad public policy.
All right. Is there anyone in the audience that would briefly like to stand up and speak to the bill in favor? All right. Opposition.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Nick Donahue. I serve as Deputy Secretary of Transportation. There are a few points. I am here to speak in opposition to the bill. The administration does oppose both provisions here. I'd like to just make a few points here to provide some additional context on the project that Senator McPike and Senator Black talked about. First is I-66 is a project that we have litigated and debated in front of the Assembly previously. Some of you may remember in 2016, we debated this topic extensively. A compromise was reached between the McAuliffe administration and the Assembly, and I want to stress, compromise doesn't mean 100 delegates and 40 senators support it. It means 51 delegates and 21 senators support, but we did reach a compromise in 2016. The project that has been implemented is a project that is in line with that compromise that was implemented. The project is a result of years of planning. It was a study that started under the McDonnell administration and then was vetted for 3 years in the public with discourse, and many modifications were made. I would also note, Mr. Chairman, we started tolling on December 4th. It is not even February yet. We have not had 2 full months of operation of this facility, and I would encourage this body to allow the department to continue to implement this project as it was studied, planned, and analyzed for years, as we're only 2 months into the implementation. I want to say that I-66 is also working much better than it used to. So prior to tolling, as Senator McPike noted, I-66 has HOV restrictions that were in place. And what used to happen is that right before 6:30, so many drivers would try and get on the road that instead of being free flow when it became HOV, the average travel speeds were around 25 at 6:30 in the morning when the road became HOV. HOV roads under federal law are supposed to travel at 45 miles per hour. I-66 did not do that. In fact, it was only over 45 miles per hour for about 10% of the HOV time period there. Since we've implemented tolling, I-66 is operating above 45 miles per hour the vast majority of the time. There are still some instances where the speeds have fallen below that, but it's a minority, not a majority of the time. This has been accomplished all while the parallel routes have not seen increases in travel times. So there's 4 key parallel routes to this roadway: Route 50, Route 29, Route 7, the George Washington Parkway. The travel times on those roadways, while I-66 has gotten dramatically better, have stayed essentially the same. And some have improved, but I don't know if it's going to stay that way over time. So I want to say they've essentially stayed the same. I do want to note there is a relationship to this project in I-66 outside the Beltway. When the Commonwealth undertook its traffic and revenue studies for I-66 outside the Beltway, those studies did show that if inside the Beltway was also converted to express lanes, there would be greater revenue potential and the Commonwealth could receive a better deal on outside the Beltway. And so there is a provision in the outside the Beltway public-private partnership that would make it a compensation event if these hours are changed or there's other modifications to the tolling operations. I want to stress, I'm a public employee. I cannot tell you what our private partner will do. I cannot tell you if they'll be successful if they choose to take certain options. What I can state is they have the right legally to do so moving forward. Senator McPike and Senator Black both also talked about the extended hours and the impact that that's having on commuters in that area. First, I want to note that the high tolls that were referenced in the discourse do not happen during the extended hours. There's no $40 toll at 6 in the morning. The $40 toll is at 8:30. When if you're a single driver before December of last year, you couldn't legally drive on the road for the most part. The tolls in the extended hours tend to be around $3 to $4. But I would also say the parallel routes provide equal travel times to the commuters that travel at 6 a.m. compared to what 66 used to do before tolling, because 66 was so congested during those time periods. And finally, Mr. Chairman, I would just note the average round-trip toll through January 18th has been $11.15. That's going in both ways. Now, that's not a full trip. That's the average toll someone paid. Many users don't go the full length. And so that is significantly less than the estimated $17 average round trip that was publicized during 2015 and became a significant campaign issue in Northern Virginia, for those of you who recall that discussion. I would also note that providing refunds when drivers get to a certain level of payment is just going to create another group of people who are inelastic demand, if you will, just like carpoolers, and don't have to pay the toll, which means the toll goes up for everyone else because there's less space available for toll payers. Similarly, it's our belief that shortening hours may hinder our ability to have the roadway function because the road use gets so congested before those HOV hours that we're worried if that happens again, will we be able to recover basically a very congested interstate in a short period of time. And I also think that would push more of those solo drivers looking for a fast trip into a shorter window, similarly increasing the tolls. In closing, Mr. Chairman, the administration does want to keep working on this issue. We need to look at it. Some of the points Senator McPike made about parking lots, more transit options, and other things, and we are in violent agreement with the senator on that issue. We are committed to reviewing the toll algorithm to understand if there are ways that we can get more cars on that road without getting to a point of congestion. These are all things that we do want to look at, but we need time. We're not even 2 months in, as I noted at the very beginning of this discussion, and so we'd like some time to review this. We're committed to continuing to work on this issue administratively. And again, I think some of the issues the senator raised are real issues that we do want to look at and try and work with the members in that area on. And I'd be happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Senator Chase. You may have a question. Do you question or speak?
Yes, I do have
Okay.
a question. Thank you. We've heard a lot today about concerns that constituents have brought to our senators, bipartisan. I mean, this is definitely an issue, and I understand contract law. I understand that you have a contract that's a private public partnership. But as a legislator, whenever you get that many constituents calling you upset, we need to work and figure out a viable solution. I understand this has only been going on, the testing started in December, but still, it's enough time to realize there's a problem that needs to be addressed. So I would like to know what steps you're going to put in place to listen to the constituents and make sure this is taken care of so it doesn't come back in the General Assembly next year.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Chase, I really appreciate your points, and I do agree that when we hear this level of discourse from the public, the government needs to pay attention. And I guess what I want to make very clear is we are paying attention. We have published day-by-day results on traffic for the first month there. What we're going to be doing over the next few weeks is reviewing the tolling algorithm. Please don't ask me to explain it because I will just say something inaccurate. But we have some very smart people who understand how that works. And what we're going to be asking them to do is review that. I think we've heard some fair points raised by Senator Vola has raised this with me as of others, saying do we need to look at 55 miles per hour? Can we lower that down to 50 or 47 or some other amount that might allow more people to use that and also at a lower rate there? And I think that's something we are very interested in doing. We needed time for the algorithm to work so that we could understand the consequences, both intended and unintended, of making modifications to that concept. And so we are going to have folks looking at that. We are committed to doing that review, and if we find modifications that can be made that help address this concern or provide a better outcome for folks, we will implement those concerns moving forward. And I do know that people don't like tolls. I understand that. I grew up in the Richmond region. I used to pay the Poway Parkway toll to go to high school. It was not fun. I understand the dislike there.
Sir, how much were your tolls when you were paying those tolls?
That's a very good question. Mr. Chairman, Senator Chase, that's a very good question. The Poway Parkway is a fixed toll that applies to all users, whereas the tolls on I-66 are dynamic tolls that allow people to use a road that they previously could not drive in by themselves. So there is a pretty big difference between those toll rates.
Now, do you think the average
Senator
house,
Chase.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, do you think the average family can afford $50 tolls each way? Is that reasonable?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Chase, the intent of the dynamic tolling is not a toll that someone would pay every day. Again, this is a new choice to drivers. On the 95 express lanes, where we did also extend the hours and have dynamic tolling in place, we find 83% of the users use the road 5 or less times a month. So this is not something people are intended or that we intend for someone to do excuse me, Mr. Chairman, every day. This is a choice that is there when there's unique circumstances that might warrant paying a toll to move forward in that faster time period there. So the other thing, again, is just remember, during these times where the tolls that were cited by Senator McPike, you could not legally use the road a year ago. So this is a choice that is being provided to folks. That being said, Senator Chase, I hear your point about those toll rates. I had a lot of phone calls on December 4th, 5th, and 6th when I had the flu. I am very much aware of the situation. The Secretary is aware of the situation. We are reviewing this. We're committed to reviewing it. And so I can give you that commitment because that's where we are. I understand the issues. We want to look at getting parking out there. We want to look at getting more buses out there. I agree with Senator McPike on that issue.
Mr.
Senator
Chairman,
Mars.
I'm sorry,
Senator.
just one follow-up statement, if you don't mind. I'm very concerned about this issue from the point of an everyday average family trying to make a living who wants to spend more time with their family. This is an issue, and I appreciate the legislators bringing this forward. I appreciate that you're taking this seriously. I will promise you, if this comes up before the General Assembly next year, I will support it full-heartedly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Marsden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry I had to step away to a hearing in courts. Are we moving more people through that corridor, the 29-211, Route 50, I-66 corridor? Are we getting more efficient use out of those lanes right now?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Marsden, we are certainly getting faster travel speeds through those corridors. We're still collecting volume data. Some of those roads are controlled by local governments, and we're not able to. It takes a little bit more time to get that information.
And tolls were projected to be about $17 in their round trip, the average toll, and we're now in the $11 range?
That is correct, sir.
So VDOT's goals going into this are being met. At this point in time, I understand we still need a lot of data to be gathered, but for right now, your goals are being met.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Marsden, I would say the project is working.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Chairman, I think it is way too soon to question VDOT's judgment here. The preliminary signs are good. I understand the problem that my friends from Loudoun County have with people coming in and having to use first to go on the Greenway and then to get hit on 66. I understand the problems. Hopefully soon the bridges will be completed over Route 7 and Route 7 will start to improve. But right now I think we need to stay the course and back VDOT's judgment on this.
Senator Favola.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have had multiple conversations with VDOT, and one of the more troubling things in my mind was the widening of the hours, expanding the hours both heading east and heading west. And so now individuals really don't have an opportunity to sort of wait out the high toll period. In the past, they could just sort of,
arrange their work schedule or telecommute in a way where they could get on 66 at a time where they didn't have to pay such high tolls. We have removed that option by having such a wide time frame. And we did mention this to you in December, and I appreciate the fact that you need to keep studying this and you want good data, but to be honest, I'd rather have you study it at, lower than 55 miles an hour, which would reduce the dynamic tolling because cars would be going slower, so the tolls would not be as high. And I want you to study it with going back to the same band of rush hour periods that we had prior. So I mean, based on the constituency I represent, I have to vote for this. I wish we had done more administratively. There isn't a need for this bill if VDOT had, and with all due respect, I think you are a wonderful civil servant and do your job very well, but VDOT should have figured out some of these barriers prior to lawmakers being asked by their constituents to put in this bill. You clearly could fix this without a bill, but here we are with a bill.
All right. Senator Cosgrove. All right. Senator Wexton.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I would associate myself with the remarks of the senator from Arlington and forgive me because I wasn't here for all this argument. I was another committee, but I would again say you guys have no idea what we're going through in Loudoun County. And I have constituents who have planned their entire commute, their entire where they purchased a house, the purchasing of a hybrid vehicle for the specific reason that they would be able to take this stretch of roadway. And the way that VDOT rolled it out and the methodology used has been really a disaster for a lot of my constituents. And we don't have the excuse of saying, well, this is a concessionaire or this is some result of a public-private partnership that we got, a bad deal on. This is on VDOT. And I support the legislation that was brought by my colleagues, and I appreciate everything they're trying to do, and I plan to vote in favor of the bill.
Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First off, I need to offer Nick an apology. I've seen him several times in the hall. I used to serve with a pilot named Joe Donahue. I called you Joe a couple of times, and it just dawned on me, like, he's not the pilot, man. So anyway, I apologize.
You don't want me flying a plane, sir.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, this bill, while well-intentioned, I think, as Mr. Donahue said, this whole thing's only been in use for 2 months. And I think it really has to have a little time to iron that out. Again, these hot lanes were not meant, for just absolute traffic, relief. They are a congestion-priced toll, and I think we need to try to let VDOT work this out. And that being said, Mr. Chairman, I would respectfully move that we PBI Senate Bill 898.
Second. It's been a motion and a second that we PBI Senate Bill 898. All in favor of PBI, vote aye. All right, there's a substitute motion. There's a motion and a second that we report Senate Bill 988, which is now the primary motion. All in favor of reporting Senate Bill 998, I'm sorry.
898.
Yeah. If this, just for correction on your motion, if we report, it has to go to finance. So report and refer to finance. All right. All in favor of reporting and referring to finance, vote aye on electronic voting board.
6 ayes, 7 nays.
Bill fails to report, 7-6. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, and I appreciate the position of the administration. Just wanted to let you know we have a tremendous problem there.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, our families don't have time to wait on this issue. So the longer we wait, the longer every month it impacts families.
Thank you. Senator Hanger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I have Senate Bill 947 today. Mr. Chairman.
Senate Bill 947, special license plates, medical service agencies.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I think
Members of the
there's a
committee.
substitute if we can
Yes,
get
I do
that.
have a substitute to offer today, Mr. Chairman.
There's a motion and a second that we adopt the substitute. All in favor, vote aye, or say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All right, motion, the substitute's before us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. This particular bill was requested by one of the counties that I represent, and the issue at hand is we have special license plates for people who are volunteers or full-time employment with fire departments and rescue squads, and we've authorized special license plates for these individuals. They are not supposed to continue to use them if they are terminated or resign, but that's not the case. In a lot of instances, they continue to use them, and there was no system in place to monitor this, and it creates problems. Sometimes these people are used to going to fires, and so they just show up, you know, like they are part of the process. So what this does is create a mechanism. I want to thank our commissioner at DMV and his staff for the substitute that fixed this in a way that I think is workable. It basically creates a process where the emergency services agencies they're authorized to share lists of their current membership that's authorized to have these license plates so that it can be compared to records at DMV. This would apply to volunteer fire as well as rescue and for paid employees. That's essentially what the bill does, and I believe with the work that the DMV commissioner and his staff have done that it should be in pretty good shape.
All right, any questions from the committee? Anyone in the audience like to speak to the bill? Anyone in the audience opposed to the bill? There's a motion and a second that we report Senate Bill 947. All in favor, vote aye on electronic voting board.
13 ayes, 0 nays.
Bill reports 13-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm back with Senate Bill 874, and I have an amendment in the nature of a substitute.
Okay. Is there a second? There's a motion and a second that we adopt the substitute. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, substitutes before us.
Thank you. Last week, we talked about this bill, and the intention is to have people signal when there's either a pedestrian or another driver nearby. And it was never intended to cover situations where there was nobody nearby. So what I hope have done, and thank everybody for helping me on this, is to set it up so that it does protect pedestrians, but only when there's a vehicle in their surroundings.
Vehicle or pedestrian. All right. Any questions of the patron?
No, Mr. Chairman, I'm ready to make a motion. I think this.
Let me find out, just
Okay.
make sure no one else has anything. Anyone in the audience like to speak in favor of the bill? Anyone in the audience like to speak in opposition to the bill? All right,
Mr. Chairman, I move to report the bill.
there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
It's a motion and a second that we report Senate Bill 874. I think your substitute makes it a lot more clear as to not having to give a signal if there's nothing around
There's
you.
nobody
and so
there.
forth.
Thank you, yes.
All right. All in favor of Senate Bill 874, vote aye on electronic voting board.
13 ayes, 0 nays.
The bill is reported.
Thank you.
Senator Abbott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got a substitute for Senate Bill 919.
All right, there's a motion and is there a second? Motion and a second that we adopt the substitute to Senate Bill 919. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this bill came to me from a group called Alexandrians for Safe Streets, and I learned that if someone during a traffic infraction seriously injures or kills a vulnerable road user, the court does not have the ability to suspend their driver's license. Further, they can only be fined up to $250. So what the bill does is it mentions who a vulnerable road user is, which is basically a pedestrian or a cyclist, and there's a few other people who are made clear in lines 11 through 14, like people in a wheelchair, et cetera. And then it lays out that if they're if the driver is committing what's considered a more routine traffic infraction, that they, if they cause serious bodily injury or death to these pedestrian, cyclists, or other vulnerable users who is lawfully present on the highway at the time of the injury, that they've committed a Class 2 misdemeanor. And then Section C, which I'm really trying to get at, is that the court can suspend the driver's license. And this is a separate and distinct offense than anything else they do. And part of the problem is you might think, well, why don't they prosecute them for reckless driving? And part of the problem is that if they don't have that evidence, that standard of proof, that they can't, and a lot of times you have someone taken away on a stretcher or don't have a witness, it's hard to, of course, prosecute that. So I do have a witness who'd like to speak, and I can answer your questions first or after, whichever is your pleasure.
All right. Senator McClellan, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Quick question for council to save us having to pull it up in the book. Can you generally tell us what the infractions are that are covered in B?
Pass this out on this side.
Mr. Chairman, Senator McClellan, broadly speaking, the sections that were included were the traditional traffic infraction, how you envision a 46-2 traffic infraction. It always involves somebody operating a motor vehicle, so it wouldn't include any infractions by pedestrians or by bicyclists. It also wouldn't include anything that had that was reckless or a higher threshold, so it's anything with a lower negligence threshold than reckless that involves operating a motor vehicle.
Yeah, I've distributed a list. Basically, the main thing we're getting at is if you kill or seriously injure someone during these traffic offenses, that you should be held accountable to the extent that you have a higher fine, you have a possibility of having your license suspended, and one of the ways we got at that with a Class 2 misdemeanor, which gets to the fine piece of it, and provides for the possibility, not the requirement, of time incarceration.
So, Senator Eben, I have a question. All the list of these sections here that would be covered, if I'm going to just pulling out 46-2-816 tailgating. If you're tailgating someone and they're in an accident that seriously injures or kills someone, the officer's normally not going to charge you for tailgating. They're going to charge you for reckless, which is Class 1 misdemeanor, carries 12 months in jail.
Sure, that would be fine. But the question is, did the officer, I would be fine to separate out any one of these. It's really giving the prosecutors another tool. I don't know if someone from the Commonwealth's attorneys is here. My Commonwealth's attorney indicated that he supports it. I think he said that the group, I don't want to misstate this, that they had a position, but I don't know if they're here. He was hoping to get a representative here.
Another one is failing to obey a stop sign or traffic light. If I run a traffic light or stop sign and T-bone someone and kill them, that's reckless endangerment of life, limb, and property. It's not just running the stop sign. This is a lesser offense.
Well, in the circumstances of these violations, we do have people who ran stop signs. The prosecutor felt they did not have, for whatever reason, they didn't charge them with that. And I'd like them to have this option as well, or instead of.
It's always easier to charge the more severe crime and have it reduced than it is to charge them with a stop sign, running a
Well,
stop sign.
if they want to start with the severe crime and then have it reduced, that would be one option for the court.
Court can already do that.
Well, no, there's no less serious offense that, unless this is passed, that would allow for taking away the driver's license.
It's improper driving. It's just not called this right.
Well, we've had cases where people have been killed. I wish there was a prosecutor here. Maybe counsel can help. I don't know. We've had cases where people have been hit by cars and killed, and they were not, their licenses were not suspended. I was told by my Commonwealth's attorney that during the what's considered a more routine traffic infraction, that they did not have that ability. I don't know if that's I'm stating that accurately.
Mr. Chair.
Senator McClellan.
Thank you. I think if all you're, Senator Eben, if all you're trying to do is give the courts the ability to suspend a driver's license for someone who injures a pedestrian or a biker, I think I'm comfortable with that, and I think we could probably handle this in this committee if you'd be willing to strike.
I think you're talking about
Class
line
2
22.
misdemeanor and combine B and C. If you're willing to do that, I think that's one thing. If you're not willing to do that, I think this is better handled in the courts committee.
Okay, wherever the committee would like to handle it, I think that would be one result that that would be progress, but perhaps you could hear from the witnesses first?
Sure. Yeah, we'll hear from your witnesses before we.
Okay, and I will introduce Mr. Mike Doyle, founder of Alexandrians for Safe Streets. He can tell you a little bit about the circumstances that led to the group, their formation.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could you pass these on? We know, thank you for the opportunity to talk. We know that the state has had an increase in the number of pedestrian fatalities and pedestrian, what I call crashes, cars or trucks crashing into pedestrians. It's had on average, around 80 fatalities in the early 2000s into 2014. And in the last 2 years, it's jumped up to over 100, 120, 130. Every time you have statistically, there's a fatality, there's also a lot of people who are injured, seriously injured or partially injured. So I'm here to put some faces or ideas of real people and what they represent. The first witness is myself. I'm a crash survivor. I was in the middle of a crosswalk in a four-way stop sign, and I was walking along, and I stopped. A car came on my left. When that car stopped, I started to walk across the walkway, and a car parallel to me going south was focused on the driver in front of him. He gunned it, and he didn't see me when I was more than halfway through the crosswalk, and he took me out. I've had a lot of injuries. I still have a lot of injuries. I won't go into the details, but I have a lot of neuro injuries on that. The driver, by the way, was deemed to be ticketed, and he got a $50 ticket. The next testimony is from Jessica and Ryan Brown. Could you pass those two out, please, on each side? Ryan could not be here today because he's in hyperbaric oxygen treatment. Ryan was struck in May of 2016. He was in the middle of a crosswalk, and the driver ran a red light and took him out. He went and he ended up in the hospital. He has serious injuries. It's been almost 22 months, and he is still, as you can see, he can't walk yet. He's got a PhD, and he has trouble talking. They have 2 children. It's affected not only Ryan and his lifestyle, it's affected the whole family. Ryan's injuries are something that's going to happen. He cannot work, and he cannot live independently anymore. He's been dealt, I'm reading from what Jessica said, he has been dealt a lifetime of disability, and the woman who hit him, because she ran a red light, but there were no witnesses to say that she did a penalty or reckless driving, she was not given a ticket. And she was not even suspended her license, whereas Ryan is going to be facing that consequence for the rest of his life. The third witness are the Bizzotti families. The Bizzottis had their mother and father a few months ago crossing a street, again in a crosswalk, and a driver of an SUV came and struck both of them and killed Mr. Bizzotti. That picture that you see of Mr. Bizzotti in the hospital, that was a few hours before he perished. The mother is still going through major rehabilitation. Because the driver stayed on the scene, there was no other witnesses. He was not charged with anything, and he's facing no penalties whatsoever. The current laws are such that when a driver crashes into a pedestrian and the driver's at fault, it's a misdemeanor 4, which is a $50 to a $250 fine. As you gentlemen well know, misdemeanor 4 is, and ladies, is also could be if you swear in public. That's a misdemeanor 4. So what we're trying to advocate, Friends for and Families for Safe Streets, is to raise the level of penalties, because that will serve as a deterrence. We are about trying to promote an environment of safety, and part of that safety is behavioral changes. So we ask you, please consider to raise the level of penalties. We're not lawyers. We're just people that got crashed into.
All right,
Please consider.
Thank you. And I just want to say that, you know, from the pictures you showed of the individuals, I don't know if that's an issue with your prosecutor or your courts, but whenever someone's life has been seriously injured or killed, that constitutes reckless. The operation of a motor vehicle to disregard of life is reckless driving, which is a Class 1 misdemeanor.
Well, if I could, sir, I'm told that from Powers versus Commonwealth in 1970 that mere happening of an accident does not give rise to presumption of reckless driving, and further that you must prove that the driving by itself is so reckless as to impart a disregard by the driver for the consequences of
I understand that.
act.
I understand that.
Yeah.
But the situation he described, where the individual gunned the car to come around the other vehicle, is a disregard for human life, because they know this is a crossing area where someone could be, and Powers would not be subjected to that. So I understand what you're trying to get at, but I still believe making it a Class 2 misdemeanor is watering it down from the Class 1 that can already be charged.
Well, if I could, I'm sorry, sir, go ahead.
I just feel like that it is from court to court how they rule on things, but the law is there for you to be able to charge in those circumstances.
If the committee's will is to strike, as Senator McClellan suggested, the ends of line 22 through 23, I just feel like to have this happen repeatedly without any suspension of license is a problem. And we know it's happening, and we know that there are prosecutors, that my prosecutor has spoken with other prosecutors and thought that the Association of Commonwealth Attorneys had that position, but I have not spoken to him directly. He was supposed to have a representative here today if they could get themselves out of courts. I guess they're in courts now. And if you gave prosecutors the choice, and this language here says it's a separate and distinct offense, if they want to you said you start with a higher charge and go down. If this is an option for the court, or if there's some reason they feel there's not the proof to do that. I've been in court in Arlington where I saw a person who was charged with reckless, and the police officer was called before the judge and the judge said, well, were you there to see it? And the judge and the police officer said no, and the judge dismissed the case. That was in a nearby circuit.
Well, there's a lot of charges of reckless that police officers charged. They weren't there to see it, but because of the damage and the injuries, it constituted it. And like I said, each judge will rule differently, but the law is there.
Well,
and,
okay, I don't want to argue with the chair. He's been an officer. I would just say that by giving an extra tool, I can't imagine that would hurt someone to be able to suspend the license of someone who kills or seriously injures.
And neither of those two people that you saw the pictures of were, the Commonwealth attorney said, you can't get reckless. That's what he said.
I don't agree with him.
Okay.
Senator Chase.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I understand the intent of this bill. I had a friend that was killed as a pedestrian walking across the streets of Richmond, so it's very personal, and I completely understand the concern and the frustration. The problem that I have here in these situations that have been mentioned is that there are no witnesses. Many times that's the thing that I'm hearing repeatedly, which is
Sometimes there are. I mean, certainly not in every case. In the case of these, in the circumstance of these cases, there were non-law enforcement witnesses.
Mr. Chairman, just a follow-up question. This is saying that we're talking about careless or a driver who is careless or distracted. Does this include, I know nighttime driving, there's visual impairment, there's bad weather?
It doesn't say careless and distracted in the substitute.
Okay.
That's different than Servel's 87 in that it's not an ambiguous standard. So it only includes, which is pretty hefty list.
What line number is that, please?
That it's not on?
Right. Where was it
Are you looking at
deleted?
the substitute? Because the words shouldn't appear in the substitute, I don't
Okay,
believe.
let me just take a look at it and look at this. Okay, so I'm just going to tell you my concern with this. My concern is that if you have someone who is visually impaired, if you have someone where you have bad weather conditions, you are taking away that person's ability to go to work. They're losing their driver's license. In Chesterfield County, Amelia County, if we're still suspending the driver's license for a period of up to 6 months.
Well, it's really up to the judge. If the judge feels there's circumstances, that's one thing, but drivers still are supposed to stop at a red light even under bad weather. If the judge feels there was zero conditions, 0 feet visibility, I guess they should pull over, or the judge should, I don't know what. But I think prosecutors and judges often consider circumstances.
Senator Coster. Mr. Chairman, we've gone round and round with this. We've talked about negligence. We've talked about reduction of the possible charges from Class 1 to Class 2. I am just uncomfortable with this whole thing. I think it needs some more work. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd move to pass by indefinitely.
Is there a second? Second. All right. There's a motion that we PBI Senate Bill 919. All those in favor of PBI Senate Bill 919 vote aye on electronic voting board.
Seven ayes, 6 nays.
Bill fails to report on a 7-6 vote.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator and members of the committee.
Senator Servel. Okay. While Senator Servel just to keep in rhythm of the docket, request from Senator Peterson to strike his bill. If I can have a motion on that.
Move, Mr. Chairman.
It's been moved and seconded that we strike Senate Bill 903. All in favor, vote aye on the electronic voting board.
Twelve ayes, 0 nays.
The bill is stricken 12-0. Okay, Senator Sarabel, which one would you like to take up first?
Doesn't make a difference to me. You just go in numerical
611.
order. 611. 611 is similar to Senator Newman's bill, which I believe is on the docket for today.
Yeah, we're going to take them up at the same time. So if you want to present yours, and then Senator Newman can
Sure.
follow right
So
behind
the explanation on the cover of the bill is pretty self-explanatory. Just it raises the minimum insurance coverages in Virginia from $25,000 for bodily injury or death to $100,000, and then the per accident provision from $50 to $200,000, and the property damage from $20,000 to $40,000. And I'm happy to go any number under that if the committee so desires. But Senator Newman's bill only does property, doesn't touch the others. So just for reference, I have a chart which shows the limits in every state in the country, which I'll pass up to the committee.
So what's the cost of the provider? What's the cost to Bill Carrico on his vehicles if we up these?
Well, there is a cost. Mr. Legault has some theories about what he thinks it'll cost at 100. I don't know if he's run any other numbers at lower thresholds, but I don't remember what he told me, but I'm sure he'll tell you in a minute. So, but what I will say is that Virginia first required insurance in 1950. Back then, the limits were 5,000, 10,000, and 1,000. We changed that from 1972 to 89. It was 20, 40, and 5. So 20,000, 40,000, and $5,000. 1989, we upped it to 25,000, 50,000, and 20, and we've been there since 1989. If you use a medical inflation calculator and you put $25,000 in through 2017, the cost would be $79,000 today. So if you use a CPI calculator, it'd be $49,000, right around 50. So these insurance limits obviously have not kept up with inflation at all, and as we all know, healthcare the cost of healthcare has been growing at a much faster rate than regular inflation, and so a $25,000 limit today completely sucks. I mean, if you get in any kind of
an attorney,
yeah, well, if everybody, for people that are injured through no fault of their own, if they get hurt, it's really easy to incur $25,000 in medical bills. And back in 1989, $25,000 in medical bills was a lot more medical care. So the result of this today is the number one problem that I ever see with injury cases that come into my office is not enough insurance. Somebody gets hit, somebody they only got $25,000 and they're stuck with that. And what that means is if the person who hits you doesn't have enough insurance, then it kicks into your own policy. Because on your own policy, you have underinsured and uninsured motorist coverage. And so your insurance company ends up paying for something somebody else did. And, so we need to keep these limits at least up with inflation so that the person who's causing the accidents is the one paying for them and not, I shouldn't be paying for somebody hitting me. And so that's why we need to change it.
So is this your chart?
Yes, sir.
According to your chart, we're pretty average to most of all the other states. Is that not correct?
We are, and Mr. Legault will be happy to tell you that this would put us at number one in the United States. So that's why I'd be happy if the committee wants to go to 50. Go to 50 and something else instead of 25. Just double it all. That's fine with me too. I really don't care. It needs to go up. And as I said, regular inflation goes to 50,000. Medical inflation would take it up to 80. So that's why I put it in. It's something that needs to be looked at and changed.
Okay. Senator Marsden.
Mr. Chairman, I would so move to drop it from 100 down to 50.
Would have to be 50.
As a
5,100,
5,100,
So,
40.
40.
well, let's
move that
let's hear
amendment.
from let's hear from those that are in favor of it.
Want to have him do his bill?
Yeah. All right, Steve, if you want to do yours real quickly, because yours is dealing with property, right?
Yes, sir.
Yours is personal injury.
His is both.
Both, okay.
His is a dirty, rotten lawyer bill, Mr. Chairman, and, and mine is not. Mr. Chairman, some of you remember that we went all through the Uber legislation, and we were trying to fight our way through that. And part of the thing that came out of that was it was a recognition that that especially on the property side, it has been a very, very long time. I've got a personal story with my wife that just 2 weeks before we were married, she had an accident. She didn't know. She had a 20 policy, and it wasn't pretty. And we got her fixed and got the other side fixed, but it was not, it wasn't pretty. There's not many of these automobiles, especially the new automobiles, that hit you anywhere close to that $20,000. I would tell you that the industry, I think, does struggle a little bit with some of the limits, and I'm kidding with my friend the senator about his bill, but I think there's a lot of concerns about changing, especially the bodily injury amount. That ends up being a pretty big pot and could end up changing your premiums dramatically. I don't want to speak for the industry, but I believe that the industry will say that either they don't oppose or maybe some slightly support some of the changes in my bill, and it's really a policy decision, Mr. Chairman. I would suggest that one way or the other, either my bill needs to roll into his or his into mine so that there's not too policy. I just don't want to carry his. That's the only, if you're going to roll this way, don't just let him keep that dirty, rotten, that bill he's got. So, Mr. Chairman, that's what my bill does, and I know there's some that are here in favor and opposed, but thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we've heard from both patrons. We have two separate situations. We have one that's raising the personal body injury and then personal property. So is there anyone in the audience like to speak in favor of either of these two bills? Now, is there anyone in opposition?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Chris Legault for Nationwide Insurance and the Property Casualty Insurers Association. This is an issue that definitely gets the attention of the insurance industry, especially on the bodily injury side of things. I will tell you, I haven't seen his chart. I've got my own chart, and it was done last year. They may be identical, but I don't know. We're not just in the middle of the financial responsibility limits. We're part of the gold standard for financial responsibility limits. 32 states have exactly what we have at 2550. So to raise it to 5,100, as has been suggested, would make us still the highest in the country. Only 2 states have 5,100. Alaska is one of them, and as you know, they practically have their own exchange rate on currency. Everything there is more expensive. So I wouldn't think that we need to go to that extreme ever. 6 states have limits slightly above ours. 4 are just above ours at 3060. So most states attempt to keep their financial responsibility limits on the low side to encourage people to purchase insurance, to have some insurance as opposed to pushing it up and having no insurance because you're priced out of the marketplace. The 100, 200 range that was introduced by Senator Surville's bill would result in about a 42% increase in premium per car.
So
that's quite a whack.
So breaking this down, if I'm a family that works, that has to get to work, I have to buy insurance. Under the Surville bill, if I'm paying $100 for my car insurance, I'm paying $142 now.
Correct.
All right.
Correct.
So it's $42%
increase.
Increase on families that had to have a vehicle to get to work.
And medical inflation does not really have anything to do.
Before you go there, how much is it for Senator Newman's? on the personal property?
Newman's bill is going to result in an increase, but it's going to vary company by company, and some companies I've checked is as low as 50 cents a month, okay?
$6
So
a year.
$6 a year. Others are as high as about $50 a year, or $50 in 6 months, excuse me. So it's going to vary some across companies. Just depends on what their experience has shown as to where they set their rates.
All right.
On the statement made about medical inflation should suggest that we should push this right on up. That's just simply not true. These rates and the minimum financial responsibility limits are really set based on average claim payouts, not on medical inflation. The information that I've gotten, and I haven't gotten it from the entire industry, to be candid, but that which I have seen suggest that the average claim payout in Virginia for bodily injury is somewhere around $11,500, well within the current 2550 limit and more than adequate to cover average claims. Several years ago, we had information that something around 90% of all claims fell under $25,000, so the 2550 limit is quite appropriate for that. Very few claims get up to $100,000 and more. So I would urge the committee not to act favorably upon Senator Surville's bill. There's really a split in the industry on the bill introduced by Senator Newman, and I'll just give you some facts to help assist the committee with its determination on that. 21 states have property damage limits of $25,000. No state has one as high as $50,000, and Virginia would become the highest in the country at the $50,000 limit on property damage. The 25 states have minimum property damage limits of less than $20,000. So states do vary all over the waterfront there on what their limits are. 5 states are at exactly $20,000 with us. So that's the picture across the country on this issue. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of Mr. Legault? Okay.
Thank you.
Like to speak?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Jackie Stone with McGraw-Woods on behalf of State Farm. State Farm writes over 1 million policies in Virginia, which is approximately 17% of the market, and we would share the same concerns that have been expressed about both of the bills. We would ask you to consider maintaining Virginia's position with the current minimum limits and not have policyholders incur additional premiums. They have the ability to obtain higher limits, and we would ask you to keep the status quo. Thank you very much.
All right. Any questions from the committee? Okay. We have the 2 bills before us. Each bill would create an increase in the premiums that are paid by the constituents, one being 42%, I think is what was testified to. The other, a minimal increase on that. Is anyone on the committee like to make a motion? All right, we're going to take them up one at a time. Senate Bill 364, Senator Newman's bill. Is there a motion on Senate Bill 364? There's been a motion and a second that we report Senate Bill 364. All in favor, vote aye on electronic voting board.
Mr. Chairman.
13 ayes, 0 nays.
Would you consider striking that? There's an amendment I agreed with the insurance company to put on.
Okay.
I failed to mention it was my fault, sir.
All right. Having voted on the prevailing side, can we strike the bill? Can we do it without doing all that? All right, just strike the board.
Mr. Chairman.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, in speaking to them, the one thing that they they would like to have is a delayed effective date so that the policies can be kind of lined up, and it delays it until January 1st, 2019. And, Mr. Chairman, if you're acceptable, we'd like to have that, sir.
Could you give us a report on what that would be?
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, on line 44, introduced, insert 2, that the provisions of this act shall become effective on January 1st, 2019.
All right, is there a motion on that
If
amendment?
I could make one technical suggestion here, it should read as to policies issued on or after that date, issued or renewed on or after that date. So if a policy renews December the 15th, then the effective increase would take place May 15th.
All right, Chrissy, tell us how it reads now. Okay, the concept, we know what it is. Okay. Is there a motion on the amendment? Is there a second? Cosgrove, a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right. Now we have, did you want to speak, Senator Chase? Or?
I think Marsden had an amendment too.
We'll get yours in just a second.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As a mom of 4 teenage kids who are all driving, I'm very concerned about my rates and my premiums going up. How can you assure me that passing this bill is not going to basically increase the cost to the point where my kids are not going to be able to drive and go to work to pay for this? Because they have to pay for their own insurance.
Right.
We're still on Senator Newman's bill.
Oh, I thought you reported it. Okay.
No, we got to take the vote. That's why I asked if that was the.
Mr. Chairman, I think it's the ultimate question, right? Is this the one thing? And I think if I could just urge people in this audience and here, for God's sake, don't have a minimum policy. It's dangerous, and if you are in that situation, you're putting your family and everything you have at risk. You literally are putting it all at risk. The problem in this Commonwealth, and I'll say it to my friends who are agents, there are agents that are writing these minimum limits, knowing that you have assets, knowing that by allowing you to do that, those assets are going to get attached, and you're going to be in deep trouble on the other side. I can tell you from the situation I went through with my wife, thank goodness she wasn't married yet, or it wouldn't have been fine, right? But because it did work out. I do think that the insurance guys are exactly right when it comes to the fact that I think ours will have a couple of pennies changes, but I think it'll have a much bigger impact. I don't know that it will have that pennies impact because there's not a policy of that nature currently for them to bounce it up against. But I do think that this will protect families in a much better way for an average accident. So I think that if it does cost a couple pennies more, which we're not positive on, it won't be many, that the protections will be much, much greater. Mr. Chairman, if I may, just also, when you think about it, to me, the next thing we have to do is we've got to stop the idea that 20 to 25% of the people driving on our roads have no insurance, zero insurance. And that's a tremendous crime that's being played out on your policies, my policies. It's a tremendous problem. We have been ignoring that for a long time. I don't know if between now and the day this bill possibly moves upstairs, we can take a look at that. But we've got to do more to DMV. We've got to do more to make sure that more Virginians have insurance. So that's my answer.
All right. Seeing no more in the queue to speak, the question is, shall the bill as amended, Senator Marsden? Yes, we did.
No, not to mine.
We're still on Senator Newman's bill. Once again, Senate Bill 364, Senator Newman's bill as amended. There's a motion to report and a second. All in favor, vote aye on the electronic voting board.
13 ayes, 0 nays.
Bill reports 13-0. All right, now we're on Senator Surville's bill. Senate Bill 611.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Marsden.
Thank you. I'd like to make a friendly amendment and suggest that we change it to 30-60-25. That moves us up, and keeps us a little bit up with the times, and without such a drastic increase that would increase rates so
Mr.
dramatically.
Chairman, I think it ought to be 30, 60, and then whatever we just did with Newman's to be consistent.
30, 60, 50.
Yeah.
60, 50. So that would
Which
be the motion,
puts
30,
us right
60,
up there in
50.
third place.
Second?
There's a motion and a second that we amend Senate Bill 611 to 30, 60, 50. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No. Well, let's take a vote on the amendment. 30, 60, 50. All in favor, vote aye on the amendment.
Ten ayes, 3 nays.
All right. The amendment is accepted. All right, now we have Senate Bill 611, which increases the premiums and the costs.
Barely. Barely.
Yeah, barely, 42%. So,
No, that was with
Mr. Chairman,
100.
I'm
That
not
was
going to
at
make the
100.
motion, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I'm not going to make the motion, but I think we should have one policy going out. It either is kind of our policy or his policy, but I don't think that both should go out. And so I'm not going to make a motion to roll or anything like that, but I do think it should be either or, in my opinion, sir.
So,
And I'm fine with that, and I'm fine being rolled if the committee doesn't like my bill, but I would hope the committee likes my bill.
all right. So is there a motion, Senator Cosgrove?
That being said, I would make the motion to roll 611 into 364.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Chase?
may I ask a question?
Yes, you may.
I'm going to ask the same question I did Senator Servo with Senator Newman's bill. If you have 4 teenage kids who have a driver's license, how much more is it going to increase my bill if you're doing 30, 60, 50?
Well, I just say to the senator that that's a complicated question because it depends what you already have on your policy. And if you already have a policy that's up high, I'm not sure exactly how that would play out if you had a minimum policy or if your children were insured not under your family policy but separately. But all I can say is not very much because we're barely pushing this. I mean, we're pushing the limit by about 5% or something, or whatever.
So I think, I mean, the testimony on your original was 42%. I don't know what it would be now, but it's going to be considerable. Anytime that
Quadrupling the limit.
Yeah, anytime an attorney's speechless and dances around that, it's going to be higher, so.
Mr. Chairman, is there,
I'll try to stand still next time.
all right, would it be possible to have one of our insurance companies kind of speak to that? I just want to get an apples to apples comparison on just the price difference,
Okay, Chris.
an estimate.
I don't know that I can give you an apples to apples, Senator Chase, unfortunately. And all these rate differentials will vary company by company. But when you increase that minimum limit on bodily injury and per occurrence cost, you're doing it not just on the lower end policies, okay? If the paid losses follow those numbers at all, then the paid losses have to be built back into the premiums in the future, okay? And if the universe of paid losses is bigger, you're going to see premium increases. And each company will base those increases on its own experience as to exactly what they were. They have to make rate filings that are approved by the Bureau of Insurance that reflect their own experience like that. Mm-hmm.
So let's make some clarifications here. The motion is to roll Senate Bill 611 into Senate Bill 394, I think is the number, which makes Senate Bill 611, correct me if I'm wrong,
property only,
has no personal injury increases. It's just what we just voted on.
It's a nice way to kill it.
Right, right.
Because we're nice guys. Are we clear on what this does. We're voting basically to roll 611 into the bill that we just passed, which makes it identical to what we passed. All right? There's a motion and a second that we roll the two bills together. All in favor, vote aye on the electronic voting board.
Sorville, you got a bill out.
12 ayes, 1 nay.
It's like my 15th app, maybe 20th.
The Newman-Sorrellville bill passes 12-1. All right.
Great minds think alike. All right.
All right.
623.
623.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, Senate Bill 623 has to do with electronic routing services. In other words, like things like Waze, Google Maps, and MapQuest. So, what the bill does, the quick version of what the bill does, is that it requires VDOT to create an online registry of roads that Waze, Google Maps, routing services like that are not allowed to route cars onto. The roads that go on are up to each locality. They can designate up to 5% of only their secondary roads, and the road also has to be in a residential district, which is a defined term in section 462100. It's basically a road with homes on either side. It also gives the Attorney General enforcement authority to make sure that this is complied with, and it excludes ambulances, emergency services, fire trucks, things like that, and parcel delivery. So the reason is these services like Waze and Google Maps and MapQuest, they're wonderful services, but they also create lots of problems. So I can tell you that in the area, the district that I represent basically has I-95 running down the entire spine of it with the Beltway at the top and the Woodrow Wilson Bridge. Some of the most notorious choke points and traffic messes in the entire country. And because of that, these routing services often end up pushing thousands of cars into neighborhoods where they don't belong and shouldn't be. So, for example, one neighborhood is Belhaven. I have somebody here from Belhaven who's got a bunch of pictures and things they're going to show you. They've had a lot of problems. You guys hand these out? And I'll let him tell you about Belhaven. The town of Occoquan, the pages are now handing out a letter from the chief of police in the town of Occoquan. Occoquan lies right at the intersection of 123, I-95, and Old Bridge Road. The town of Occoquan is 2.2 square miles, has 1,000 people that live in it, and 7,000 cars a day go through it, even though these 7,000 cars are going through an area that is not a primary road. I've also heard, just this weekend, people who live along US 50 have been complaining to me about new congestion showing up in their neighborhood because of the I-66 toll situation. So people that used to take I-66 because of the tolls, now Waze is starting to push all these cars into people's neighborhoods. And it creates major safety problems. If you read the letter from the town of Occoquan, the chief of police there, he says that this cut-through brings these vehicles under our narrow one-way streets through historic business and residential districts. It's simply not a matter of inconvenience, but they create real public safety issues for the town, residents, visitors, and businesses. And you see there he lists out the problems. Pedestrian vehicle interactions, stop sign violations, driving off the roadway, ignoring lane markings, blocking intersections, distracted driving, road rage, speeding through crosswalks in residential areas, traffic-affected timely emergency assistance. There's so many cars in there, they can't get ambulances to people timely anymore because cars go through. I've also heard that 18-wheelers have gotten stuck in town because they end up, Waze sends them into town, they get stuck, can't make a turn. It's an old town with little tiny streets. And it's not just happening there, it's happening in lots of places. And as you all should have received some articles I gave you during session of the problems that have occurred in other states. One town in New Jersey is basically just shuts down during rush hour. They put up barriers so that people can't get into their town. There's some people that put fake things on Waze. They'll put up fake road blockades or accidents to try and keep people out, and then until Waze bans them off their system. There's another town I read where they have people putting stickers on their cars, and you're not allowed to be on their roads unless you have a sticker on your car. So there's places all around the country that are taking matters into their own hands, and I thought that in Virginia we could have a little less of an aggressive system rather than blockading things. We could just tell these services not to route people on there. I'm not telling anybody they can't use the road. All I'm saying is that these routing services shouldn't route them into neighborhoods where they don't belong, where the roads aren't safe for that. And that's basically what the bill does. And I think there's a few people here testify in favor of it, and a couple opposed.
All right, if you want to bring those up in favor,
Sure.
5 minutes on the timer.
5 minutes.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Sarah Taylor with the City of Alexandria. The City of Alexandria is in strong support of this bill. It would give the city the option to reduce cut-through traffic in certain neighborhoods. In Alexandria, we have a number of very specific neighborhoods that get cut-through traffic for people looking to go to the Beltway, the Woodrow Wilson Bridge, head south on I-95. The traffic backs up for blocks. People aren't able to get into their neighborhoods or even get out of their driveways in a lot of circumstances. So we are in support of this bill because it would give us the opportunity to reduce the cut-through traffic in our neighborhoods, protect quality of life, increase safety in the community. We're thankful to the senator for bringing this bill and this issue to your attention and appreciate your support.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Sid Hatcher. I live in Bellhaven, which is Fairfax County, Alexandria. My comments reflect the incidents that are occurring in our neighborhood, very much like what is occurring in a number of other neighborhoods. Same kinds of things, people running stop signs, high speed. To give you a few facts about our neighborhood, we rest right in between Richmond Highway and Route 1, which is a major thoroughfare getting to the Wilson Bridge. When Waze starts to back traffic up on Fort Hunt Road or Richmond Highway, it'll send folks through our neighborhood. It's 0.2 of a mile longer, but that route is 3 stop signs. And the irony is folks get to the bottom of Woodmont, they have to make a left turn back onto Fort Hunt Road. So they're fighting with their fellow commuters for that same space. So it is a problem. In the package that I provided, it goes through some of the data, pictures of what happens when traffic gets blocked up. I've taken time-lapse video of the situation at peak rush hour. There's 150 or more cars per hour that come through. And that, like I said, that has nowhere to go. Your package also has screenshots of a traffic mapping application, and I've kind of correlated that traffic mapping to the actual traffic. What happens is as the traffic starts to build, folks will see it on Waze and they'll say, I got to go through Bellhaven. So we have a hazard of moderate traffic, high speed, and that's when I'm worried about our children and the vulnerable road users from the previous bill, 919. And then as traffic gets heavier, it comes to gridlock, and that's where we run into people not being able to get home, emergency vehicles, et cetera, not coming through. So that's all I have.
Anyone else? Nope. Anyone else in the audience like to speak in favor of the bill? All right. Senator Servell, just real quick, do you think by limiting this that you stop that habit? I mean, people know the route, so why would you think that they wouldn't take it anyway?
They'll know the route, but I think it will reduce the activity over time as people who are new to the area, et cetera, start to not know the route during their commute anymore. I mean, people who grew up in the area like me knew a lot of these ways, but not a lot of people were using them until Waze and Google Maps told everybody about them. So, yeah, it's against New Virginians, right? But
all right.
It's a real problem. I mean, these pictures he showed you right here, these streets were built in 1920 when people were driving Model Ts. And the streets are only wide enough for 2 cars. So if somebody parks their car, there's only room for 1 car to go by. And then you throw 150 cars into an environment like that where people have their kids and their bicycles and stuff. It's crazy. And so they ought to be able to designate that neighborhood as off limits. And same thing like with the town of Occoquan or places like that.
Some of my roads still have grass growing up in the middle of them, so I'm not sympathetic there. So,
Mr. Chairman.
Is there anyone, Senator Morrison?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've lived in Northern Virginia all my life, and Arlington streets are a mystery wrapped in an enigma that I still haven't figured it out. So I've used Waze, and it has taken me into people's neighborhoods, and I'm saying, there's no way I'm going to get there. And all of a sudden, boom, there you are. You have arrived at this place. You had no idea that you could go that way. I'd never be able to replicate it. But at the same time, I'm going through townhouse subdivisions, places that are, highly crowded, this probably wouldn't be an issue in most places in the state, and I'd love to see sort of a local option here. But I certainly get the senator's point that this is putting real stress on small neighborhoods throughout crowded suburbs and cities like northern Fairfax County and city of Arlington and Alexandria. And I think there's something to this, and I think it's something we need to pursue. The only thing is, I would hate to see this, placed on jurisdictions in the Commonwealth that would be of no real benefit for. And I don't know if there's any way to make this as more of a local option.
Okay, so is there any, let's hear from the opposition real quick.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and committee members. My name is Guy Rolling. I represent Google. And I've had lots of discussion with Senator Serval about this legislation, and I'm certainly sympathetic to the issue. I'm just not sure from a practical standpoint how you can eliminate public roads from this application. I had suggested to Senator that maybe a better way of dealing with this is a program that was undertaken earlier, well, I should say last year, by Fremont, California. They had traffic issues, and what the city of Fremont did was instituted commute hour driving restrictions. And we worked with Fremont and Waze and posting these driving restrictions on Google Maps and the Waze application. And that way motorists know that if they're traveling through a certain area, there's going to be a no right turn or no entry during the commute rush hours. And I think that's probably a simpler and a better way to handle this.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Jeff Merriman with Verizon. We have a couple of applications that would be impacted by this legislation, VZ Navigator and MapQuest. And our issue is similar to what Mr. Rowling stated, but it would essentially make it illegal for us to provide information to our users that information is perfectly legal information. And if we did it incorrectly, we'd be fined for doing so. So these are perfectly legal roads. We just wouldn't be able to tell our users that they could use them.
All right, anyone else? Senator Chase.
Senator Serval, this is thankfully not an issue in my district. This is one of the reasons that whenever I worked for several congressmen, the deal was I didn't have to come to Northern Virginia because of the traffic. I know my district probably would not be in favor of this because they like the Waze apps and it's working pretty well there, but I would agree to some type of amendment or local option if you'd like to provide one of those.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to have that as either Plan District 9 or local option would be fine with me.
So even if we do,
or Plan District 8,
if that would be amenable and had the ability, what is your response to the opposition where an individual has a legal right to know that information and you're going to withhold it from them?
Well, the bill doesn't require them to take the road off their map, so you can still see it on the app. It just prohibits their app from telling them to go that way. Their little purple line you have to follow. That's what the bill would do. That's my interpretation of it.
So playing devil's advocate, knowing what kind of an attorney you are and knowing your ability, if I had Verizon and I had MapQuest and there was an ability to go around a detour and I was involved in an accident because MapQuest wouldn't tell me which way to go, is there any liability there from them withholding that information?
No, not for. I mean, if they routed you onto a road that was a one-way road and they told you to go down the wrong way, I could see liability. But the way
it's under construction,
the way well, there's lots of roads under construction they route you onto, but I would think that the way this works is instead of routing you onto the road you can't go on, it would route you onto a different road, either keep you on the way you're going or route you around the neighborhood a different way around. So,
Who would enforce it?
under the way the bill is written, the Attorney General can enforce it if they're notified of a violation. I think it says up they can sue for $500.
Right. Okay. Senator Wexton.
Question for the patron.
Yep.
Scott, what happens if there's an emergency and, 95 is shut down or something like that, and cars have to be routed off of, the main thoroughfare in order to get them through a detour? Does your bill have any sort of emergency provisions?
No.
Okay.
I was trying to keep it as simple as possible, but no, it doesn't.
And Mr. Chairman,
Senator
just
Wexton.
one final question for the patron. Would this apply to, a GPS that's built in a car? That doesn't,
OnStar.
that's, OnStar or something like that? Would this bill apply to those mapping services?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
It's any system that provides routing services utilizing live traffic information or something. I defined it in the bill. But so if you're, it would apply only to OnStar or whatever to the extent it's got live traffic information going into it. So, for example, my Honda Odyssey, my 2006 Honda Odyssey doesn't have that. It's just a static map. And
Like, meaning it will change your route depending on traffic conditions?
right.
Okay.
It's only that type of
During the
app.
course of the trip?
Right. Only that type of app.
All right,
All right.
thank you. Thank you.
All right, we have the bill before us.
If anybody wants to make the Planning District 8 amendment or the local option, I'm happy to accept that as a friendly amendment. Sure, the city of Alexandria.
Senator Marsden. All right, so there's a motion and a second that we specified to just Planning District 8. Let me ask,
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Just for clarification, would VDOT still have to maintain the registry and it would only be applicable in Planning District 8?
Yep. It's just, the registry is just a website with the streets on it.
all right, so there's a motion and a second that applies only to Planning District 8. Does that make it special legislation if it just because it's a, all right. All right, so, okay. All right, so there's a motion and a second that we adopt the amendment to apply only to Planning District 8. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? One abstention. So now we have the bill before us as amended. If this bill were to be reported, it would have to go to finance.
Does?
Mr.
Senator
Chairman.
Wexton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually read this as having a local option now because the way that the bill is written, VDOT has to create this registry, but then the localities may designate roads to go into it. So the locality ultimately would make the decision whether to make that designation or not. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
So, Scott, just for your information, my notes are that this has to be referred to finance, so
Okay. I have no fiscal impact statement in yet on it, so
we'll determine that in finance.
sounds ominous.
The VDOT's involved in it, so we have to determine it.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Chase.
I'd just like to make a quick comment, if I could, to the patron. I will support only if it's District 9.
Right, I got it.
Okay, District 8, which is not my district. Thank you.
All right, so there's a motion now to report
And refer.
and refer to finance as amended in a second. All right, all in favor of reporting and referring to finance as amended, vote aye on electronic voting board.
6 ayes, 6 nays, 1 abstention.
Bill fails to report.
Got it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Senator DeStefs.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you very much. I'm here on Senate Bill 958. And as I said, when I had to follow Senator Surville in courts, man, it's hard to follow him on anything. So let me explain Senate Bill 958. What it does is it authorizes a toll facility operator to mail invoices for 2 or more unpaid tolls in first-class mail rather than certified mail. The bill also provides that there's a rebuttable presumption that the owner or operator of the vehicle has received the invoice and created for the toll facility operator presents either a U.S. Postal Service certificate for mailing of it or certified service confirming such mailing. And, Mr. Chairman, we have a couple of folks who probably want to speak in favor of this.
Sure.
So with that, I'm going to be short and sweet and then open it up for questions or whatever you need.
All right, thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and committee. I'm Veronica Latonia. I represent the South Norfolk Jordan Bridge toll facility located in Chesapeake, Virginia. We support this bill. The process of mailing certified invoices to customers also creates a very cumbersome process for the customer to receive their invoice. Oftentimes, we receive complaints that, yes, they might have received the post office notice stating that they had certified mail but failed to go get it, or by the time they went to go get it, it already expired and been sent back. So this process would actually streamline our invoice process and allow for a better and more effective process of them receiving their notifications.
Thank you. Linwood, where you been? I hadn't seen you down here that much.
I've been trying. Mr. Chairman, members, Linwood Butner with KVCF Solutions and representing South Norfolk Jordan Bridge. We do support this legislation and thank the senator for bringing it. This is an issue that really impacts the processing of these mailings, and we feel like this came out of a study, not a recommendation of the study, but something that we were able to bring forward, and thanks to the senator, and we would support the bill.
Okay, one question. Are you retiring after this, or you've retired 10 times?
I've tried it. I've tried it 10 times, Mr. Chairman, and it just doesn't work.
Any questions of the patron or those that are in favor? All right, there's a motion and a second to report.
Mr. Chairman, just in all fairness, you may want to see if there's any opposition. I'm not trying to kill my own bill or anything, but I'm just trying to be fair to both sides, and I don't want to rush something.
You did say that you didn't think there was any.
I don't think there is, but.
Any opposition to the bill?
Okay.
All right, Senator Wexton.
Question for the patron. Can you give me other examples of places in the code where we have taken away people's due process in this way? Yeah, and had rebuttable presumptions for U.S. mail in lieu of requiring certified mail?
Mr. Chairman, I'd defer to our wonderful attorney on this one, because I'm not one. I didn't sleep at a Holiday Inn last night either.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Wexton, we use this language and allow mailing a summons by first-class mail and offer some sort of rebuttable presumption with with different toll photo monitoring system sections. I have a list of the sections. I anticipated this question. It does seem unusual, but this is the process that we use in 46.2395, or excuse me, 46.2613. Probably more on point to your question is 46.819.1, which deals with photo monitoring toll facilities. 819.5 deals with the Dulles Access Highway tolls. So this is in line with the language that we use in those sections.
And Mr. Chairman, following up on that, does this call for a photo monitoring violation, or is it just based purely on the transponder? Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions? Senator McClellan.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I guess I can think of some scenarios where it might not be possible to rebut the presumption if you never received the envelope. And so living here in the fan with a mail slot that there have been times where the mail doesn't get delivered. We've seen stories where mail hasn't been delivered. If the envelope is never delivered, how would a person rebut the presumption? Would it be enough to just come into court and say, I never got it?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to actually defer that over because she runs the back office there, and I've got to tell you, when I went through it, she gave me 20 different ways that they reach out to the customer, and what this would do is cut their administrative costs so they can have a little more leeway when dealing with customers. So I'm going to let her kind of answer that one, step out of the way, because she's much smarter on that than I am.
Okay.
Sure. So in lieu of certified mail, there's now other technology that the Postal Service uses that we can track invoices aside from having to actually send it certified. And it's more cost-effective and also provides just a more effective delivery of that invoice or letter. So there's first-class tracking and other trackable methods that don't have to necessarily be certified.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Well, so is that follow-up question, Mr. Chair?
Senator West, or McClellan?
So is that on line 218 where it says, if the toll facility provider presents either a United States Postal Certificate of Mailing or a certificate of service confirming such mailing, what, does that mean that this presumption only takes effect if you have something from the Postal Service certifying, either under penalty of perjury or something, we delivered it?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Bill's before us. And there's a motion to report and a second. All in favor say aye, or vote aye, sorry.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you very much.
You want to vote?
I did.
Okay, sorry.
11 ayes, 2 nays.
Bill reports 11-2. Senator Favola. I'm ready. And the question is, are you ready for us?
I guess I'm sufficiently inoculated. Mr. Chairman, Senate Bill 185 is before you, and what this will do is it would permit a locality, and I believe cities already have this authority, but counties do not. However, the language reads every locality to actually change the name of any highway within the jurisdiction of that locality if the highway was named before 1965. And of course, the jurisdiction would have to agree to pay for any appropriate signs. That's the bill. Jurisdictions that would take this on, of course, it's permissive, so it would just be, another enabling authority that the jurisdiction could either choose to use or not. And if the jurisdiction did choose to use it, there would most likely be a pretty rigorous public process. So many voices would be heard in terms of whether the name should be changed and then what the name should be changed to.
So any name before 1965.
Right. The logic was
there was no.
We picked 1965 because we just wanted to make sure nobody was currently serving in the General Assembly, and we wouldn't be overturning a name that the General Assembly may have determined. So that's why we said prior to 1965. That was the only logic for selecting that date.
Okay.
And I am carrying this on behalf of Arlington, but other jurisdictions would benefit as well.
All right. Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just by way of example, so here in the city of Richmond, just this weekend, there was a section of First Street that was renamed in honor of Benny Lambert. It's the area where his optometry shop and his office was for many years. Just down the street, 18th Street, a portion of it was renamed after Oliver Hill. So the cities already have this ability, as the senator said, but if Henrico County wanted to name a portion of the street after one of its sort of major significant local people, it couldn't do that. And so I think that's sort of one example of
So-
why they may want to do this.
So if the city already has this authority, why does it say county, city, or town?
Mr. Chairman, unfortunately, the issue of who can name roads has been something that plagued me all summer, and it's still not something I entirely understand. I wish Joanne were in the room because she is the authority on this issue, but as I understand it, this bill would change that counties could name primary highways. Currently, the only locality or the only body that can name primary highways is the General Assembly or the Commonwealth Transportation Board. What this bill would change is that a locality could rename a primary highway that was named before 1965, the portion of that primary highway that is in the locality. So that's really the big change that this bill does. Cities and counties and towns can rename streets, roads, and alleys pursuant to 15.2, but they can't rename highways, primary highways.
Gotcha.
So the big ones, that we would all know and recognize.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I will just say that we're, in Arlington County, we're under the expectation that the city of Alexandria, for example, could change the portion of Jeff Davis Highway that's within Alexandria, but Arlington County could not. And they're adjacent jurisdictions, and it would be very confusing to have one portion changed and Arlington not go ahead and do that. So I don't know. I guess the cities can name primary
Any highway excluding interstate highways? Or would it include? Could they name bridges? Could they name, it would just take all the authority away from the General Assembly and give it to the localities?
Well, Mr. Chairman, the language would allow them only to name a highway, the language that's in the bill.
But a highway is a way or place open to the.
Right. But earlier in the bill, we specified the CTB can name highways, bridges, interchanges, and other transportation facilities. So I think since we specify in the bill earlier, it would mean that they could only rename a highway in this instance. But just one other issue is that primary highways could be primary in some places and not in other places. So that might be the issue that Senator Favola is addressing there, where in Alexandria, Jeff Davis Highway, for instance, is not a primary highway, but in her district it is, and that might be the issue as to why they are not able to name it.
All right.
That was very clear. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, the patron? All right. One second. Let me see if there's someone that wants to speak to the bill. Anyone in the audience want to speak to the bill? Anyone in the audience want to oppose the bill? How much money does Arlington get from the state for those primary highways?
I wish the Arlington representative is here. I can't tell you the exact amount. You know that Arlington entered an agreement with the state, so now the county owns some primary highways, and I don't know because the county is responsible for maintenance, and there is a reimbursement from the state. But the last time we were briefed, the Joint Commission on Transportation, we were told that the amount that the state has been transferring over is less than what the county has actually been spending on the maintenance of the highways. Although I will say that maybe the standards that Arlington is applying could be higher than what the state might be applying in their maintenance. But I don't
There
have
are state dollars that maintain those highways.
There are state dollars, yes.
Senator Chase.
And county dollars as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Favola, is there any exclusion for historical historical characters or figures like Jackson, Lee, that type of thing in your bill? Is there an exemption for that?
Well, in terms of renaming a highway,
right.
No, it would give the authority to the counties.
So they could take a highway like Lee Jackson and they could change it into something else. Is that correct?
If it's a highway within the jurisdiction of that county, yes.
Okay, thank you.
But
No
I would
further
just say, local
questions.
governments will go through a process to do this. So the culture and values and the political leanings of a certain jurisdiction will come into play when a jurisdiction decides to take this on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a follow-up question. I think this reminds me of the whole statute issues, which I think I've been very clear, at least in my opinion, that that's a statewide issue. So while I normally would, under normal circumstances, would probably be fine with something like this because of the climate, I think whenever people are trying to erase our history, I just have a little bit of heartburn over this legislation. So I'm sure you understand, given my position, but thank you.
Senator Suderline.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If we end up reporting the bill, I just have a question. Let me pull up so I can get you the line of it, where it mentions that both the county, cities, and towns will all have this authority. Every town is in a county, so who has the authority then if there's a disagreement on what the name should be of a highway in the town?
Fortunately, I don't have a town within Arlington.
I have
so
a lot of towns.
I am going to defer to General Counsel on that. That's a very good question.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know the answer to that. I'm sorry. I could certainly work on it and get you an answer by next week, but I don't know. I don't have that today.
All right.
There are agreements between counties and towns, so maybe that could be worked out in these agreements. Like, in Fairfax City, for example, Fairfax County pays for the public schools in Fairfax City, but Fairfax City pays to physically maintain the schools. So there's these strange arrangements already between counties and towns.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Suderline.
I would just point out that in a lot of our localities, there are great relationships between the counties and towns, but some of us have counties and towns that have a lot of disagreements about a lot of things, and I'm not interested in creating a new opportunity for debate between the two of them.
All right. We have the bill before us. Is there a motion on the bill? There's a motion. Is there a second? There's a motion and a second. We PBI the bill. All in favor of PBI and Senate Bill 185, vote aye on the electronic voting board.
Seven ayes, 6 nays.
Bill is PBI'd 7-6.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Welcome, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. It's been a while.
And I've got the power. All right.
Senate Bill 805, make quick dispatch of that. That's the school bus driving records, somewhat similar to what Senator Deeds had last week. I'm going to ask that one be stricken due to the conversations that's been going on about that.
Right, is there a
And
motion?
come back next year.
All right, it's been moved and improperly seconded to strike Senate Bill 805. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, please, everybody vote on the electronic voting machine. Oh, I just voted for you, sorry.
Yeah, you may want to send your proxy over to me and then do all the voting. Okay, I've got it here. All right.
12 ayes, 0 nays.
All right. Next is Senate Bill 496. This is the off-road recreation vehicle highway speed limits. Currently in Southwest Virginia, we have a tourist venue known as Spearhead Trails. It's some 80 to 100 miles of trails that individuals use to ride off-road vehicles. It was conceived long back for some of you, which I'm looking here. Senator Cosgrove and Marsden may be the only ones that are here that knew Jackie Stump, who was the House of Delegates. When Jackie was in the House, they began this process to build these off-road, all-terrain vehicles or trails. And what this allows this region to do is to cross the highways where these trails interchange, much like what West Virginia does. And they need the provision in the code to be able to do this. And this bill actually came at their request because they're not allowed to operate on a vehicle with the speed limit more than 25. This just bumps it up to 35 to where they can cross to get to those trails.
All right, does anybody have any questions of the patron? Is there anybody here to speak in support of the bill? Is there anybody
She's here, but she's in finance right now.
Okay.
So
Is there anybody here to speak in opposition to the bill? Senator, does the state police have a position on this?
I think they're fine. They were fine. They're not here either. So.
Okay. All right, the bill is before us. Is there a motion? It's been moved and properly seconded to report Senate Bill 496. All those in favor, please vote aye. Opposed, no.
10 ayes, 3 nays.
The bill is reported 10-3.
Next, Mr. Chairman, is Senate Bill 492. You heard earlier from Senator Vogel about the towing, and this is another towing issue. This raises the state trespass towing rate for the first time in 5 years from 135 to 150. Local governments within those towing boards will set the lower rates, can set the lower rates. It sets medium and heavy low tow rates. Setting these rates at a local level has been a common practice, but has never been authorized by the code. In this bill, our maximum rates are the same as set in Fairfax County. Localities with tow boards can set rates statewide. So this will increase it from 135 to 150 with local control.
Okay. Is there anybody here to speak in support of the bill?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Matt Benke with the Northern Virginia Towers Association. We appreciate the chairman sponsoring the bill. This is something we do every 5 years. We come back and ask for a rate increase. The CPI during the last 5 years went up 7.3% according to the Federal Reserve. The increase is an 11%, so you won't see us for another 5 years. And as the chairman said, the localities that have tow boards, which are most of the big localities, can set a lower rate. So thank you for your support.
Yes, sir. Welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Fred Sheeler with Henry's Wrecker Service, and I also sit on the Arlington County Tow Board and Fairfax County's Tow Board for trespass towing and setting the rates. We would very much like to see this rate increase. My company, my employees, I needed to operate. Just my health insurance cost us last year on renewal went up 28%. My rents go up every year 3 to 5%, and we desperately need this raise to keep our business flowing and be good to my employees and be able to give them raises also and take care of them with their health insurance and their benefits. So I strongly support this bill and like you guys to support it also.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Bieber?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Craig Bieber with MIRA, Major Incident Heavy Recovery Operators Association. We are in support of the bill. The only thing I would add to what's already been said is that the people who are actually paying the fee are people who've been illegally parking, they violated the law. And as Mr. Sheeler said, this is just a way for businesses to keep up with the cost of living and with a lot of the inflationary pressures due to increasing healthcare costs. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anybody here to speak in opposition to the bill? Hearing none, are there any questions of the committee of the senator? Hearing none, the bill is before us.
Second.
Been moved and properly seconded that we report Senate Bill 492. All those in favor, please vote aye. Close the roll.
9 ayes, 4 nays.
All right, this bill is reported. Next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next is a Senate Bill 504, which is the pilot program for 9-axle, 91,000-pound trucks, or 6-axle. I said 9. Sorry, been a long day. This pilot program is what the bill that I have would allow Virginia to enter into a pilot program if approved by federal law, and it would allow 91,000 pounds with 6 axles. Currently, with the 8-axle trucks, there are several different limits in which we just raised. Forest Products, we allow 90,000 on 8 axles. 5 axles. We allow fluid milk trucks for 94. We allow customized cargos. And this pilot program would allow us to run a 6-axle truck with 91,000 pounds on it. We currently allow 6-axle trucks, but they're dump trucks, which these dump trucks are more compacted. They do more damage to highways than the 6-axle truck would do. What the 6-axle truck allows is a little bit better stopping power because you have another axle with brakes. The 6-axle dump trucks doesn't have that because you raise those axles when they're not in use, and sometimes they raise them when they are in use, which is a violation of the law. This allows the Commissioner of Highways they would be empowered to withdraw from this federal program at any time or any point if the preliminary data does demonstrate that there's some harm or public safety to it. This is a strictly voluntary program, and the bill would not mandate that Virginia participate in the federal program. It would merely grant Virginia the option to do it, to utilize those 91,000-pound trucks with 6 axles. So there's people here to testify to the bill, but that's basically what it does. It's strictly permissive language to allow us to enter into that pilot program.
Senator Carrico, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
The federal weight limit, this would match what the federal weight limit it allows at this point in time,
Yes.
right? Okay.
That's why the federal permission, the pilot is there because the federal program is looking at these 6-axle vehicles.
Just a question, are there any amendments to the bill? If not, that's fine.
No, we're good.
Okay, is there anybody here to speak in support of this bill?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yep, there is. I'm sorry. Okay, you have it.
Well, let's go ahead and hear it first, and then we'll move it.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Carrico, the amendments, there are 2 line amendments, but the second amendment adds a second enactment, which basically requires VDOT to convene a work group to study these issues. And it's pretty lengthy, so I have copies for all the members of the committee if you want to review it, or I'm happy to read it out, whichever you prefer.
If you can just hand it out, it'd be fine. Basically, Senator, do you want to talk to the amendment?
Well, it basically requires that the department convene a work group to identify implications of what the Commonwealth's participation will be in this program. And it just kind of sets forth the parameters and what it would do and the meetings when they would take place before November 30th.
And I would also note that the amendment does require that an executive summary be reported to the General Assembly by 2019.
So that we have an idea of what their
Is there a motion on the amendment?
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we adopt the amendment. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All right. Now, is there anybody here that would like to speak in support of this bill?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Ken Hutchison, on behalf of Anheuser-Busch, I want to thank, first, before I start, I'd like to beg your indulgence and see if I could have committee clerk hand out these handouts which have some good visuals I think that the members would benefit from. Would you accept those?
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you.
Is this the chairman's bill? If he's not going to stop you, I'm not.
I was going to hand them out for him.
All right. We thank the chairman for his willingness to work with Virginia's manufacturing and agribusiness community to address many of the Commonwealth's largest employers' inefficiencies that we face in trucking our products and goods to the marketplace. Just to be clear, on behalf of the coalition that will be speaking on behalf of this bill, we are not here asking you to endorse heavier truck policy today. We're merely asking that you give VDOT the authority it lacks to join a yet-to-be-adopted federal pilot and to ask them to vet the practical questions that many of you all have had and concerns that would arise if Virginia were to join a federal pilot. The enactment language proposed by Senator Carrico indicates clear direction to VDOT to evaluate the matter, and we appreciate the amendment because we have nothing to fear from a data-driven process which would evaluate the pros and cons on this question. Many of you all have asked, why would we do this in advance of the federal government adopting the pilot program? And I think there are two basic responses. Number one, it would be unreasonable, I believe, for Virginia to say that we are going to wait for others to lead before we act. And two, because in theory, the pilot program will involve a 10-state limitation, we think it would be prudent for VDOT to have that authority it needs to join the pilot because we believe there will be great demand at the state level to get into the pilot. Since they don't have the authority today, we think it would be prudent for VDOT to have that while they're evaluating the pros and cons. Some have suggested on the opposition side of this bill that there would be some sort of endangerment to motorists. That is a very fair question to ask. I would point to an Idaho study that conducted a 10-year pilot that found no safety risk, heightened safety risk. The requirement that would require the utilization of a 6-axle would reduce braking distance by 1 foot according to the Comprehensive Truck Weight Limit Study. That's a federal government U.S. DOT study. It's not Anheuser-Busch. It's not our coalition information. It is federal government study. The conclusion in this study calls for more data to be collected on this topic. But common sense would suggest that if we are efficiently loading our trucks, there are going to be fewer trucks on the road, enhancing public safety. Some have suggested that this approach at 91,000 pounds would dramatically increase the wear and tear on Virginia's highways and interstates. This document here from US DOT says that there would be up to a 4.2% reduction in life cycle pavement costs with our proposed configuration of 91,000 pounds on 6 axles. That's a 4.2% reduction in pavement life cost. The 6-axle 91,000 pound configuration is federal bridge formula compliant in this document. That means the stress applied to the infrastructure is the same or less than the stress applied by the current 80,000 pound 5-axle configuration permitted under the current limitation, thus would not increase bridge maintenance needs. The Minnesota Department of Transportation found the addition of a 6-axle resulted in a 37% reduction in wear and overall number of truck trips. A 91,000 6-axle truck has a lower equivalent single-axle load than 80,000 5-axle trucks. You'll hear from many interested parties today, including Anheuser-Busch. I would encourage you to take note that the proponents of this legislation are embracing a data-driven approach to the question at hand, and our opponents appear to have zero interest in collecting more data on this topic.
Mr. Hutchin, we'll determine whether they.
Understood. I'd like to introduce Jeff Barris with Anheuser-Busch. He's the logistics group manager from our facility in Williamsburg, just to make a few brief remarks. Thank you.
Yes, sir, welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Jeff Barris with 32 years of logistics manager experience, specifically 19 years with Anheuser-Busch at our Williamsburg brewery. Making friends is our business in Virginia. We sell 67 million gallons of beer annually with 43.1% of the market share. This translates to $57 million of state and federal excise taxes paid annually. Between our operations and our family of independent distributors, we contribute to over $450 million annually to our economy. We're proud of our beer, our presence in the community, and we want to grow our business in our state. Your decision to opt into the pilot program would benefit our brewery in 5 ways. Putting safety first. Through this program, we would drive 260,000 fewer miles every year on our Virginia roads, significantly reducing our exposure to accidents. The addition of the 6-axle also improves the braking distance relevant to the current equipment configuration. You would also be creating a better world. This initiative would reduce our environmental footprint in Virginia by over 800,000 pounds of CO2 annually. Now, as a benefit, we expect a 10 to 13% reduction in trucks, and that translates to a financial savings of potentially over $2.25 million to the Williamsburg brewery fleet. Now, this savings is an additional expense this additional savings after the expense of the $950,000 for the additional trailer axle and truck maintenance. This also helps the Williamsburg brewery compete for volume with our sister breweries in the U.S. By having more productive trucks, we can expect to gain additional production volume, which is a win for our state, our employees, and our supporting businesses. And finally, as a benefit for our fleet and our carriers, it gives them the ability to ship at 91,000 pounds with 6 axles that can translate into more revenue for our carriers. This can be viewed as a premium service, as not every trailer will be converted. In summary, we're very excited for your consideration to opt in, which will improve the safety of our roads, reduce our environmental impact, and increase business for our brewery, network of distributors, and carriers within our state. Well, subject to any questions, Mr. Chairman or committee members, we appreciate your time, and thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. If we have questions, we'll call you back up.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Matt Wells on behalf of Westrock in favor of the legislation. I'll be brief. Westrock is Virginia's largest paper products manufacturer. We have 3,000 employees across 8 facilities in the Commonwealth, including paper mills at Covington, Hopewell, West Point, and Lynchburg, and smaller facilities in Richmond, Henrico, Martinsville, and Lowmore. We do about $1 billion in direct economic impact to the Commonwealth every year. Paper is a heavy product. As some of you may be aware, we move about 3 million tons of freight in and out of Virginia every year, about half of that by truck, and about 500,000 tons of that solely within the Commonwealth. The patron and the other speakers have done a good job talking about what the program does. I want to talk a little bit about what makes Virginia unique and what would make it uniquely benefited from this proposal, and that is the port. Westrock's mill at Covington is the single largest exporter out of the port of Virginia by volume, shipping about 400,000 tons annually out of Hampton Roads. A significant portion of that is by rail, but sometimes rail isn't available or isn't the best choice, and we use truck. This bill would allow us to ship with fewer trucks when we have to use trucks, which would reduce our cost and provide the mill with a powerful competitive advantage against foreign competition. We're not the only ones that would see this benefit. As another point is, as the patron pointed out, these vehicles are already on our roads. In 2017, the Virginia DMV issued nearly 32,000 overload permits, which allow a vehicle to travel at 84,000 pounds on state and local roads. Farm and forest products can run up to 90,000, again, on state and local roads. And in addition to that, containerized cargo going to and from the port can run at 94,500 pounds on the interstates today. All of these vehicles on 5 axles, and all of them an example of this legislative body finding a happy medium between the needs of commerce and the needs of safety and road infrastructure. Additionally, as you can see from your map, over 30 states currently allow trucks weighing over 80,000 pounds on all or part of their interstates through federal exemptions. We view this bill as a reasonable measure that could be of significant benefit to businesses in the Commonwealth and as a happy medium with the addition of the 6-axle that this committee has tried so hard to find over the years, and we would encourage the committee to act in its favor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Vassy, welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. It is evening now. I'll be brief. 3 reasons we support this: competitiveness, efficiency, and finally, environmental footprint. You've heard from the gentleman from Anheuser-Busch. I won't speak about that, but it is significant, and the carbon footprint reduction from this is significant. Congestion is a big piece on efficiency. 10 to 12% reduction in the number of trucks that we have to move being more efficient. That's a major improvement, and less capital costs for building new roads certainly can be put into the equation. The other thing I'll give you from competitiveness, Virginia ranks, we have distributed to all of you a plan that we've shared on how Virginia is going to become the #1 competitive state for manufacturing in the next decade. And Virginia ranks number 12th in the country for spending on highways. It's time that we get the efficiency out of that. We think that this is an extremely important measure. We want to be part of this pilot, and when you look at the map, you see where our competition is in the Midwest and the Northeast. We're not in the game. We've got to get in the game. And the final thing I'll say is that we make all these products in the Commonwealth of Virginia. We make the trucks and we make the trailers. And I will say to this committee that we will be holding an exhibition in May where you can see these new trucks and you can see all these trailers and you can actually perhaps even drive them. So you can see exactly what we're talking about. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Scott Johnson. I represent International Paper. Many of you know of the International Paper Mill in Franklin. It was repurposed and makes fluff pulp. Most of that is shipped out of the Port of Virginia, but International Paper also in South Richmond has got 2 corrugated cardboard facilities that ship out of the Port of Richmond, and we also have a facility in Lynchburg. And so for all the steel chainsaws and weed eaters that are manufactured at the beach, they go in boxes that we're proud to manufacture. We support this bill.
Thank you, sir. Is there anybody else? Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Ron Jenkins with the Virginia Loggers Association. We represent Virginia's logging workforce. We support Senate Bill 504, and we bring word from the Virginia Forestry Association as well, who also supports Senate Bill 504. Thank you.
Look, just while you're here, sir, y'all can already carry 90,000?
Correct, yes,
Okay.
that is right, with an overweight permit.
Right.
We cannot carry it on the interstates, but we can on the Virginia's highways.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, welcome.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Susan Seward with the Virginia Forest Products Association. We also strongly support this bill. Thank you.
Especially thank you for your brevity. Hello.
Mr. Chairman, Katie Frazier with the Virginia Agribusiness Council, speaking on behalf of our members, including Smithfield Foods and the Virginia Poultry Federation, and likewise, we do support this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, is there anybody here to speak in opposition to the bill? Anybody? Anybody else?
You're at the end, okay. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, good afternoon, evening. It's been a long day. Thank everyone for the opportunity to speak for a few minutes. I'm Tim Bentley, representing Norfolk Southern and also CSX. Randy Marcus sends his regrets. He cannot be with us this afternoon. So I speak on behalf of over 3,200 employees in the only Class 1 railroad that's headquartered here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And we oppose this bill in sort of 2 principal buckets. And so I'm going to address one quickly, hopefully both quickly. I am a recovering lawyer, though, so I do get paid by the word. First, the substance issue of heavier trucks themselves. The railroad industry, first of all, and the trucking industry are partners in moving freight. We rely on trucks. Obviously, our intermodal franchise relies on trucking. And there are many places that trucks can't go that rail can, and many places that rail can't go that trucks can. So we certainly appreciate our trucking partners. And some of the folks you've heard from today are actually our customers. So we appreciate, obviously, their contributions to the Virginia economy.
But one key difference that I have to point out in trucking versus rail is the cost of infrastructure and how that infrastructure is maintained. In 2017, Norfolk Southern, with revenues of about $10.5 billion, invested $1.7 billion with a B in our infrastructure. That's a revenue, a ratio of about 16%. And that's how we make sure that we can haul what we need to, where we need to, when we need to, safely and efficiently for our customers, for the public, and for our owners. So let's take a minute and just look at what heavy trucks do to the infrastructure that they use. According to a 2000 federal DOT highway cost allocation study, an 80,000-pound 5-axle truck covers about 80% of the damage that it does to highways. And 6-axle 97,000-pound trucks cover about 50% of the damage that they do to the highways. Nothing in this bill limits the weight of the trucks to be considered. And this is going to tie right into my second point, which is the process that we're using to address this. We are talking about something prospective. And that's the key here. There have been prior attempts at implementing a federal pilot for heavy trucks going back several years, the last of which failed in 2017. And the most recent one, like the ones before it, did not contain any money for states to cover highway damage, injury to motorists and property, nor did it contain any money for data collection, collation, and submission. But it did require state agencies to report data to the federal DOT. So not only was there no benefit to participating states in the form of money coming in, there was an affirmative cost going out. So the question then becomes, why should Virginia be the guinea pig with our congested roads, 48-year-old average bridge age, and ever-increasing fiscal demands? Where is the benefit in this bill to the Commonwealth of Virginia? The bill's proponents will tell you that the bill doesn't really change anything, that Congress still needs to act, and that VDOT needs to act once Congress does enact a pilot. If Congress passes a pilot program, though, what will it look like? We've heard about 91,000-pound trucks. We've heard about 6 axles. We've heard about these different things. But Congress has not acted. There is no pilot program. So why does the Commonwealth need to act prospectively? Does that mean we're going to have a pilot for 91,000 pounds, 97,000, 110,000? Any restrictions on commodities, speed limits, hours of travel, routing, schools, hospitals, and so forth? So that's something that has to be considered. It's our view that the way that public policy is made in the Commonwealth of Virginia is through the legislature. That you've heard mentioned to some of the other commodities that are allowed, the forestry products, coal and asphalt products, which this committee addressed last session, locally grown Virginia produce. All of those have been handled in subcommittee once a bill has been produced so that the relevant stakeholders can jump in and speak on the merits, and that there can be a public vote once the actual factual consideration is before you. The question of whether a 91,000 or a 97,000 or any other pound weight truck can operate in Virginia is one that you should decide once you have the facts and the information to make the decision. If a constituent, a neighbor, or a friend wants to oppose those trucks in their backyards or on their bus routes, what will you tell them? Talk to VDOT? The General Assembly can't sit on the sidelines for this issue. So the only reason that there is a vote that this is before you is that things have stalled at the federal level. And so a vote in favor of this bill is going to be interpreted as a vote in favor of heavier trucks and will be used to support that there is an appetite in Virginia for a pilot. Now, maybe when the pilot comes out, it'll have money, maybe it'll have benefits to the Commonwealth. Let's talk about it on the merits once it gets before us. But to prospectively vote on a bill before the pilot is before us and cede authority from the General Assembly is simply not the way to make public policy in the Commonwealth. And that's where Norfolk Southern's real concern lies. So we would just ask in the strongest terms that you oppose this legislation. Let's see what happens in Congress. Let's see if there's a pilot, and if it comes back before us, we can address it at the appropriate time.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and set this 5-minute timer here, so please try to be concise.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Rob Bohannon with Hunton & Williams here on behalf of the Virginia Railroad Association. Virginia Railroad Association represents Virginia's 9 short line railroads. And I want to talk about this just briefly about how the unique disproportional impact of short line railroads. These are called last mile of service railroads that help connect Virginia's businesses to the Class 1 rail network. Their bread and butter business is the 1 and 2 carload trains, very small carloads that they help connect a lot of times in rural areas. That's something that increasing the truck weight that shipment could easily go onto a heavier truck and really be impactful to that small business. And they operate a dozen, 20, 30, 40 miles of track. And some of these short lines don't do a lot of carloads per day. So they would sort of feel this really disproportionately if a federal pilot were to be enacted. As Mr. Bentley mentioned, this has failed several times at the federal level. Back in 2015, an amendment to the FAST Act failed 187 to 236. And then the effort to amend the Appropriations Act failed last year. And absent that action, now these companies are asking you to again, prospectively offer Virginia up as someone who wants to be involved in this pilot project. But let's take a look at the latest pilot project proposal that was at the federal level last in 2017. It was a 15-year pilot. That's not a pilot project. That's policy. These companies are not going to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars in truck equipment for a pilot that's lasting a few years. They're investing for the long term in this. So a 15-year pilot really seems like a shift in policy. And that's really what this is about. Is Mr. Bentley talked about the ways we've addressed overweight permits, in which time when there's been a specific need, the railroad industry has not stood in the way of those. We've understood business decisions and the need to adjust policy to address that. But what we're essentially saying, if we were to go this direction, would be that those overweight permits aren't necessary. We'll just expand the policy to the whole state, and whatever Washington dictates through a pilot proposal, we would then accept. It's important to note that the 2016 VDOT study that Mr. Hutchison referenced, at the end of that study, what the conclusion was, there should be no changes to the current weight limits that are in place, and that's the 80,000-pound weight limit. Proponents will also say that this is applicable to interstate highways. These trucks don't load and offload on the interstate highways. They got to travel on the secondary roads. That's just a fact of life. So I think, following up and finalizing here, if a federal pilot's enacted, we should thoughtfully consider that and look at the merits of that specific pilot project. But we should not prospectively jump up and say we want to get into something without knowing what it's actually going to do, because that could change at any time. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, my name is Angela Inglet, and I'm here with the Virginia Association of Counties. And briefly, I'll just say that VACO opposes any attempt to increase weight limits above the current federal standards. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Yes, Chairman, my colleague runs with the Virginia Municipal League, and for the reasons stated by my partner in VACO, we also oppose the bill.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Miles Laurie on behalf of the Virginia Transportation Construction Alliance. Our concern is simply for the infrastructure in Virginia. And I understand that the argument is that this weight is going to ride easier with an additional axle, but the fact of the matter is more weight is more weight. That's tough on the bridges, that's tough on the roads, and that's where our concern is. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Dale Bennett with Virginia Trucking Association, representing the guinea pigs that are being asked to participate in this experiment. We don't support the legislation, and our membership is divided, about 50-50 between opposed and being neutral, and the ones that are neutral haul for a lot of the folks that are pushing this proposal. And our concern is pure economics. This would require retrofitting of existing trailers or the purchase of new trailers. They're concerned that they're going to feel the pressure to have to go out and spend for an existing trailer anywhere from $8,000 to $10,000 to put an additional axle under it to be able to carry this weight, or their fleet becomes obsolete and they have to purchase new trailers. So that is our concern over the issue, and the fact that we'll be asked to put forth these capital expenditures and more than likely not get paid more to do so. So the experiment is going to be conducted at our cost without any benefit really for us.
Okay.
So that's our position.
All right.
Thank you
Very much. All right, Senator Carrico.
Mr.
Looks
Chair.
like everybody's, yes, Senator Wexton.
No, McClellan.
Oh, I'm. Yeah. See, we
The
got
other Jennifer.
Jennifer dilemma going
The,
on here.
the junior Jennifer. Thank you, Ms. Chair. I have what may be a question and maybe more of a comment, but let me preface it by, so I'm concerned about the truckers, because I have a number of owner-operators and truck drivers in my district, admittedly, many who haul for Midwest VACO, which is also in my district. But what I'm hearing from my truckers is it is very hard for them to figure out how this pilot would be beneficial or harmful to them, because they don't know what the federal pilot is going to entail. They don't know what the commissioner is going to authorize related to fees for 6-axle trucks or 7-axle trucks. And they're also dealing with a dilemma right now where you have these newer 7-axle trucks that don't fit the maximum gross weight chart in Code Section 46.21126, because the chart was created before these trucks with the 7 axles with the different weight distribution, which in their opinion is safer, was created. And they're trying to figure out, is this federal pilot going to address that problem? Because they've already bought a truck that they're having issues with now. So I don't understand. I don't know what to tell my truckers about whether this pilot, that I don't know what the status of it is. I don't know what the details of it are going to be. I don't know under what conditions Virginia is going to enter. And they're in Charles City County, and one of them couldn't be here today because he's on the road. And literally we're texting back and forth with each other over sort of, here's the amendment, and here's what they're saying. So I don't know that he's going to be able to go to Congress or go to this working group. He's going to be looking to me to make sure that whatever this pilot is, it's not going to cause him to have to buy a new truck or pay more for the truck that he already has. And I don't know what to tell him.
It's voluntary.
Well, it's voluntary for the pilot, but once we're in the pilot, isn't that going to have an impact on what permits or what fees he has to pay if he has a truck that doesn't meet truck weights now, or truck weight requirements now?
Mr. Chairman, nothing prohibits the use of 80,000-pound trucks in this pilot. It's strictly voluntary. We're talking about 6 axles opposed to 5. Retrofitting, I understand Dell's dilemma, because if you want to participate, if you want to get into this and you want to haul more than 80, you're going to have to retrofit your trailer for a 6 axle. We already allow what we call piggybacks, where you put 2 trailers together and you pull them down the highway. And that's what convinced me, the safety aspect of it. Having 6 axles on one trailer is a lot safer than that mechanism that we put them together. This is a voluntary program. No one has to do this. If you look at what 80,000 pounds right now, and when Miles was talking about the Construction Alliance, they're able to use a 6-axle dump truck now, which compacts a lot of weight, which does more damage to the highway than what a 6-axle tractor trailer. So we've allowed different types of trailers to operate on the highways. This federal program and the pilot that we're entering into and that we're putting forward today is strictly permissive. If your driver doesn't want to do it, he doesn't have to do it.
Follow up to that, though, Mr. Chair.
Senator McClellan.
So, but if my owner-operator trucker decides he doesn't want to participate because he can't afford to retrofit his truck, but another one does, isn't he at a competitive disadvantage to carry freight if he's competing to carry the freight?
No more competitive than if the guy wants to add another trailer to his truck and pull it down the highway.
All right. Hold on a second. Senator Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Carrico, perhaps one of your witnesses, and perhaps somebody on the other side as well. As I remember the testimony here, I think we have a little bit of a conflicting opinion on whether the 6-axle truck does more damage than the 5-axle. On the one hand, they're saying, that the 6-axle truck does less, and then there was other testimony, was there not, that the percentage of damage to the roads was greater with the 6-axle trucks? Was that?
So let me explain axle weights.
But I understand, but is that, first off, is that testimony is in conflict? Which is the reality here?
All right,
there's one that has data and there's one speculative, I believe. Because of the weight, it's going to cause more damage. But when you when you have tandems, the axles, you distribute the weight on those tandems. And when you compact it with 5 axles, there's no way to distribute that weight any more than what you have now with the 80,000 pounds. When you add another axle to it, you can distribute that. But the data on the 6 axles from the study shows that it's about, was it 4% less damage to the highways than what the 5 axle truck does at this point in time.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Senator Favola.
I just, this 15-year pilot, let me just be clear. What this bill would do is tell Congress that Virginia wants to participate in the pilot. So we would be another.
I don't think it doesn't. Congress, I think, and Ken, if you want to step up here, I can't speak to how the federal law does it, but the program's in place, right?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
Yet to be
I'm going to let
adopted.
you
Mr.
testify to
Hutchinson,
what
briefly.
Congress is doing.
Briefly.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Ken Hutchison on behalf of Anheuser-Busch. The pilot, as our friends in the railroad industry noted, it is yet to be adopted and may never be adopted. But with the announcement of a $1.5 trillion infrastructure package just last night, there is great reason to believe that there will be opportunities in the new Congress to explore opportunities for the pilot. To your question, this bill does not stipulate that Virginia wants to join the pilot. It simply says if a pilot is adopted at the federal level, VDOT has permission to join, because when we met with them this summer, they indicated they didn't have the ability to do so.
Okay, so let me do a follow-up question.
Senator
So is,
Favola, and please, I only get to be the chair once in a while, so let's make
oh,
sure we
I
get this right.
appreciate that. I apologize. Mr. Chairman, follow-up question. To the patron or the expert, so it's permissive on VDOT. In theory, VDOT could decide to not participate in the pilot.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, is that
Not only
fair?
could they decide not to do it, if they decide to do it, the language before you says they have permission to withdraw from the pilot at any point in time that they discover something or realize something or find something that they don't like. And so that's, given that they are the experts, we feel like that is a very appropriate, ability for them to have.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Favola.
Thank you. One more follow-up question. If VDOT decides to participate, would VDOT identify factors that they would want evaluated or policy principles that they would want to review? Would we, in fact, gain enough information to get some policy guidance out of this so we could understand if we wanted to permanently do this or change our transportation modes altogether?
Mr. Chairman, the answer to that question is, in theory, yes, they will have the opportunity to review the parameters of the pilot if it's ever established. The purpose of the enactment language that was adopted was to give VDOT the ability to go ahead and start asking the practical questions. Okay, since there's going to be a time crunch potentially to get into the pilot, what are the questions that we need to know in advance? What are the answers and data we need to warehouse and put together to evaluate, does this make good public policy sense to join the pilot? So the enactment language just puts them on a course of evaluating the data that they currently have today to determine whether there is sufficient reason to join. And if I may just answer Senator McClellan's question, to your question about the competitive disadvantage, I've been told, I don't have it at my fingertips, but I can track it down, about 80% of the shipping business by truck is going to be at the 80,000 pounds or less. It's that 20% of the very heavy manufacturers that would be sort of in line to take advantage of a pilot if it ever existed and if Virginia joined. And so 80% of the business would be still at today's business as usual. So,
Just to be clear, that's my guy. I mean, we're talking about truckers in Charles City County who, to be blunt, are shipping in some cases for Midwest Vaco. So I'm kind of stuck between two constituents here.
All right, Matt.
Very briefly, if I may, Mr. Chairman, Senator McClellan, if your constituent is in fact shipping for us, especially from our Richmond box plant, that would be an instance where he would cube out before he would hit weight, and so that's probably an instance where he would want to retain the traditional 5-axle 80,000-pound model, and that's part of what's going into what Ken is talking about.
Okay. Is there another, all right. Senator Favola, are you in the queue again, or was that from leftover?
Mr. Chairman, I'm finished with my questions for the moment.
All right, thank you very much. All right, Senator Carrico, why don't you go ahead and wrap this up, please?
Don't think I
I
can
didn't
say
see you on the
anything.
want to speak thing. Oh, Senator Morrison, go ahead.
Could we hear from the gentleman who had the conflicting data on the damage between 5 and 6?
Yeah, no, that would be the railroads. Right, okay. Oh, wait a minute, is that who you want to hear from? Okay, all right.
Mr. Chairman, exceptionally briefly, yes, thank you, Senator Morrison. The study I was referring to was a 2000 federal DOT study that looked at highway cost allocation, and that's the one that talked about 80,000 pounds, 5-axle trucks covering about 80% of the damage they do to the highways, and 6-axle 97,000-pound trucks. Now, 97,000 admittedly is more than the original proposed pilot that didn't pass, but that data nonetheless was 50% at 97,000 pounds, so presumably it would be somewhere in between as far as 91,000 pounds is concerned. If I might just very briefly address 2 points that have been made, and I'll be exceptionally brief. First of all, the DOT study from 2016 that's been referenced did mention the pavement changes in life cycle. Also mentioned that there was only one state where public safety was considered, and that had a 47% increase in significant crash rates for 91,000-pound 6-axle trucks in the state of Washington. That's, I think, important. And then lastly, on the amendment says the department may consult relevant stakeholders and may review the fee structure issues related to reasonable access and existing data. It doesn't say they have to.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, Senator Carrico,
So
let's
just
go
to
ahead
wrap
and
up,
wrap
that
this
was
up.
a 2000 study. We're at 2018. The 2016 study was presented by Mr. Hutchison. That was dealing with 97,000, which is 6,000 pounds higher than what the 91,000 pounds is. So, like I said, it's speculative using old data and different weights.
All right.
What the data has now is new.
All right, thank you. And we're going to go ahead and bring this to a head, but I do have one question for Anheuser-Busch. No Clydesdales this year? In the Super Bowl, really? Oh, I love it. Okay. All right, we've talked about this. We've asked the questions. The bill is before the committee. Move to report. There's a motion to report the bill. Is there a second? As amended, correct?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we report the bill as amended. Would you please open the roll? All those in favor vote aye. Those opposed, nay. And would you please close the roll?
6 ayes, 7 nays.
Okay. The bill fails to report?
Not reported.
Yes, that's correct.
7-6.
Sorry about that. Yes.
All right. Mr. Chairman, the last bill I have is a bill that deals with, that we all heard last year. It deals with, and there's some amendments to this bill. If I'll let Christie report those amendments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On line 93, introduced after section, insert by mailing a summons. The second is on line 95, after coverage, insert, however, if a law enforcement officer uses a handheld photo speed monitoring device to record a violation of 46-878.1 and personally issues a summons at the time of the violation, the conviction that results shall be made part of the person's driving record and used for insurance purposes in the provision of motor vehicle insurance coverage. The third is on line 96, after issued, strike pursuant to, and insert as provided in. And on line 4, line 100, after or, strike renter, insert owner. Finally, on line 107, after owner, strike lessee or renter, and insert or lessee.
All right.
All right, you've heard the amendments. Is there a motion on the amendment?
I move the amendments.
Is there a second? You have a lot of Proxies, you can second all you want to. All right, here's a second. All those in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Aye? Opposed, no? I have it, so.
All right, so the amendments were offered due to the commissioner at DMV seeing some things that needed to be addressed, and that's why the amendments were here. So back to the handheld photo speed monitoring device, and it's was before you last year, right at the very end, and we wanted to bring it back because you know, as we move into the 21st century and we have so many people that are agencies that are out there, and we have so much construction going on the interstate, and a lot of the situations where the state police are asked to provide safety there in those areas. These troopers are stationed there, and it's really has to be egregious before they pull out and do anything. This device would be very helpful for them to really slow traffic down through those work zones. And what this device does, this is not like a red light camera or anything like that. This device is operated by a law enforcement officer. It is operated and visual speed is taken. The description, everything that you would do with a radar is basically done with this handheld radar. The only difference now would be the ability to issue a summons through the civil.
Let me suspend for a minute.
All right.
Folks, if you want to have a conversation, can you, Senator Morrison, Senator Favola, you can talk to them, but just we can try to listen to the chairman here. All right, go ahead, sir.
So what this device would allow them to do is to be able to work these work zones and be able to issue citations through civil process. It would not take away their ability to issue a summons traffic infraction. And it would allow them to operate in those work zones more effectively and slow more people down with this device. We have these devices that are becoming available. I think the state police, with the training that they do on radar, LiDAR, and all the other devices to control speed and to monitor safety, would be the best fit for them to be able to operate this in a work zone activity before we expand it out to other agencies that may want to do it in the future, which I'm not opposed to. I just think, you know, we need to begin where the experts are to make sure that these devices work properly.
Thank you, Senator. Do you have anybody here to speak in
I
support
do.
of the bill? And sir, I'm going to ask your indulgence to be as brief as you possibly can.
I will.
Yeah, we've been here a while.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one final point, because the chairman covered all the basic technology advantages to this LiDAR gun that's connected to a video camera and a handheld PC, is that using this technology, you can face your accuser, which is completely different than a fully automated system, because each pull trigger, we know who the trooper is, we know the shift they're on, we can schedule hearings by trooper as opposed to any other type of schedule. So you can face your accuser, have that discussion, which everybody wants in terms of a due process. So that's one more advantage this technology has.
Okay, thank you. Are there any folks here to speak in opposition to this bill? All right, I would just say that if you like photo red, okay. Wait, let me finish here. The difference between photo red and this is operated by a trooper. This is not a stationary standalone, got to send a picture where it has to be then evaluated by a law enforcement person. This is done all right there. Correct. Understanding though that basically, as I understand, it's just be a civil penalty associated with this particular infraction. Is that correct, sir?
It is a civil penalty unless it's egregious, then the trooper can go get them.
Right, exactly, okay. All right, are there any other questions of Senator Carrico on his bill?
I have one question.
Yeah, Senator Suderline.
Mr. Chairman.
This was what we discussed at one of our Transportation Commission meetings. And the question that I remember Senator Chase asking was how soon do people get notice about it? What's the situation on that?
Yeah, that's in the bill.
Mr. Chairman, the summons has to be mailed within 14 business days from the date of the violation.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, can I clarify my question? I understand the legal requirement. What's the expectation of, I understand it's got to be within 14 days. What's the expectation of how likely it will be? Is it something where, should we usually expect it'll be close to 14 days, or can it happen more immediate?
Mr. Chairman, would you like your?
Okay. I just would say we can't control the mail.
Yes, sir.
Typically for in-state violations, the lookups are done pretty much in real time. So a 7-day turnaround in-state is not inconceivable. To mail it when it gets delivered is different. We can't control when the mail gets there. But to actually mail a citation within the state, in-state is 7 days. Out of state, it can take a while sometimes to get the registrations. So that's why a 14-day is typical for a mailing date for any type of owner-mailed photo enforcement program.
Thank you. All right, are there any other questions of Senator Carrico on this bill? Yes, Senator Wexton. Okay, just want to make sure I got the right Jennifer. We're good.
Last year, you brought this bill last year, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the thing I think that was problematic for me last year was that the bill called for 100% of the civil penalties to be paid to the state police. Is that still a part?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Basically, they're going to have to purchase equipment, all the things that are required in order to get upfitted to be able to utilize this, and that would cover that cost.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Wexton.
And I appreciate what the patron is trying to do, and I think, I mean, it's laudable because it's very difficult for troopers to pull out onto, 95 or these highways, and I get it because I've been driving up and down 95 on my way to and from Richmond. But doesn't this bill kind of create an incentive to just park a trooper on the side of the road and boom, 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 get people who are speeding and rack up a bunch of money, much needed funds, but doesn't it create an incentive for them to do that?
I would answer that they are there. They are there now. The only difference is they are handcuffed there. There's nothing that they can do to, if they see a violation, unless it's really egregious, because they just can't leave.
Senator Carrico, I think maybe it needs to be fully understood that these are troopers who were there. When you come up on a construction area,
Right.
construction site, they have their lights flashing, but they are stationary. And unless it's an egregious violation, they need to stay there for the safety of the motoring public.
Right, and they can't leave there. And the question to the revenue is, or the money collected, there is a cost for the operation of this and upfitting and all that. If I don't think that would be, it would be more revenue neutral. In other words, the state is not going to have to fund this. If we go down that road, then we probably are not going to be able to do it because the cost of it. This would be able to bring in the civil violations, the dollars, and upfit the department to utilize this and to utilize the program, keep the program running. I guess the same argument is with the county. If you feel that shouldn't be, then no county should be able to adopt an ordinance and keep that within their county whenever they write tickets. Same way with e-summonses. E-summonses is a program that is administered by the Department of State Police, and some counties in your area collect $5 off of that, and the state police get nothing for monitoring it, yet they're making $5 off the e-summons. So there's a lot of things that the state police does that go in the hole on, and this one, I tried to put it in the posture to where they are revenue neutral to be able to do it with collection of the money.
Senator Wexton, does that complete your questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Chase.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question, or really, I'd really like to make a note. Last year I was against this bill, but I'm for it this year, and let me tell you why.
And that's okay.
I'm sure you'd like to hear that. I like the fact that there's due process. I like the fact that there's not a third party administering this process, that it's actual law enforcement. I like the fact that it's not recorded, because I think there are privacy issues whenever you keep this data for long periods of time, and that's reasonable in my estimation. And I think the amount of mail time is reasonable. I want to make sure if there's a backlog that people aren't getting this bill 30 days later and wondering what in the world, is this? So I guess that's my one concern. But I'm in support of your bill this time. I did not vote for it last time. I think it's taking care of some of the issues that I had. And I would like to move to report because I'm hungry and I haven't had lunch.
Only 5:30.
Is there a second? Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Oh, okay,
I'm
good.
sorry. Forgot I was on the committee.
There you go. Okay, the bill has been moved and seconded to report. And Senator Carrico, you have a number of proxies. However, Senator DeSteph has asked
I know.
to vote in the negative.
Yeah, I'm trying to make sure that gets recorded right.
Okay, please open the roll. All those in favor, please vote yes, yea, and those opposed, no.
Did I get it right?
All right, please close the roll.
10 ayes, 3 nays.
Thank you. The bill is reported. Mr. Chairman,
Chair?
That should be the
no,
last.
sir, we
bill.
have
No.
one more.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
Bit of
wait,
business.
Mr. Chair.
Senator McClellan.
I have a question for the chair, and then depending on his answer, a motion. Is this our last committee meeting?
No.
Okay. Mr. Chair, having voted on the prevailing side by which we failed to report Senate Bill 504, I move that we reconsider that vote.
All right, it's been moved that we reconsider the vote that we did not pass Senate Bill 504. All those in favor, please vote aye. Opposed, no.
13 ayes, 0 nays.
Okay. Ms. Chair, I have a motion, and then I'd like to speak.
Senator
to the motion.
McClellan.
I move that bill go by for the week. I think some of the discomfort that at least I have, and I think some other people have, is committing us to a pilot that doesn't yet exist with no fail-safe. And I think if you would be willing to, because part of the problem with the enactment clause is, what if the pilot isn't in place by November 30th, 2018? Then this working group has nothing to report. But if you'd be willing to amend the bill so that we authorize the Commonwealth to enter into the pilot once it starts for up to 2 years, and then they have to come back, VDOT has to come back, and this working group meet, evaluate it, come back to us, and get approval to remain in it after reporting to us sort of, here's what the pilot is, here's what our experience has been, here's our recommendation. Because I think for some of us, it's the discomfort of committing ourselves, in theory, to something that's not definite.
All right, Senator McClellan, let me go ahead and do this. There's actually a motion to take this by for the week. I'm not sure if it's a good time to negotiate between what's going to happen.
I was going to say, well, if we'll take it by for the week, I'll get with the stakeholders.
That's fine.
It may take, we may need a little more than 2 years, because when you upfit those vehicles,
Well,
recoup costs.
but without objection, this bill will go by for the week.
Okay.
Senator Favola.
I just want to say, I'm collaborating with Senator McClellan. It is very important to me that we have input of VDOT and that I understand exactly what the principles VDOT is going to be evaluating, putting together
All right, then, without objection, this bill went by for the week. Mr. Chairman, gavel is yours.
I just want to say that's it for us, but we have 14 bills next week on the docket, and we have 14 because if we ran into any things like these, we'd have time to do it. But I appreciate everybody taking time out of their schedule today to make sure that we can finish on time. You go ahead and bang the gavel.